Because of Shu Luo's behavior. Red Giant. Born prematurely. The people around quickly took several steps back. They just feel the heat wave coming towards them, as if they are not facing a person, but a stove. At this time, the person in charge murmured, "The general's state seems to be somewhat different from Hulk and Abomination." When the Hulk and the Abomination were angry, they didn't feel hot all over their bodies. Their bodies were like a furnace. This has only happened to the general. When the general is angry, his body temperature will start to rise, and it seems that what flows in the blood vessels is not blood, but real molten lava. The person in charge said loudly, "General, we need to do something, and that is to conduct a comprehensive inspection on you. Your state is different from Hulk and Abomination. Hear this." The Red Giant turned to look at the person in charge, nodded and said, "Okay." Finished. He walked towards the person in charge. The person in charge backed back again and again. "General, your temperature is too high now. I can't bear it." The Red Giant was taken aback. He looks at the others. The others also retreated step by step, as if avoiding the plague god. The person in charge quickly said, "General, I can see from your appearance just now that you seem to be angry, and the temperature of your whole body began to rise. Calm down mood." The Red Giant quickly calmed down and took a few deep breaths. As the Red Giant's mood continued to calm down, the temperature on his body also slowly dropped. It quickly returned to normal temperature. As soon as his thoughts moved, he returned to his human body. He walked towards the person in charge. "Why am I different from the Hulk and hate them? After they transformed, they were all green, but I was red. In addition, after they transformed, there was no increase in body temperature. Why did this happen to me?" Here. The person in charge said, "This needs to be checked carefully. Although you are all mutations induced by gamma rays. But after all, everyone is an independent individual, and there will be more or less differences. Maybe you originally had a special constitution, or maybe something happened to your gamma ray experiment." He paused, and quickly gave General Ross a reassurance. "No matter what, the most important thing is that you are safe and sound. After all, this gamma ray experiment is extremely destructive to the human body, and normal people will die suddenly. And you are fine, and you can transform into another powerful existence, which fully shows that the experiment was successful, and this is the best thing. As to exactly what has changed, we just have to do a good job of checking." Hearing what the person in charge said, General Ross said, "You are right, it is already a great blessing to be able to succeed." At this time, the adjutant next to him came up. "General, you have successfully completed the experiment, and now you can go to find Richard. We just have to do the same thing as the last Abomination, grab that Peter Parker, and Richard will show up. Then you'll be able to catch that troublesome fellow." General Ross shook his head and said, "With my current strength, I'm afraid I still can't deal with that Richard. After all, after several years of growth, the Abomination has reached nearly 200 tons in strength, and it is still no match for Richard. I just got this power, and it's even more impossible to be Richard's opponent. I need to continue strengthening my own strength. I have undergone earth-shaking changes, and my strength has made great progress before I can go to Richard to settle accounts." General Ross thought clearly and analyzed the situation rationally. The person in charge next to him nodded. "The general is thoughtful. We really should improve our own strength before we can continue to look for that Richard. Let's go, General, let's go test it first." General Ross nodded. Immediately, General Ross followed the person in charge and entered the laboratory again. "Start a comprehensive inspection test." Shortly after, basic testing is over. General Ross and the person in charge stand in front of a computer in the laboratory. The person in charge pushed his glasses and looked calmly. "General, the test has come out. Your initial strength is 100 tons. It's the same as the Abomination and Hulk back then, with an initial strength of 100 tons. From the perspective of strength, you are indeed very similar to a certain extent. You are all brand new superfighters created because of gamma rays, but there are some differences in some details." Hearing this, General Ross nodded. The person in charge continued, "In addition, we also found a problem. That's why anger has different effects on you and the Hulk. If Hulk gets angry, his strength will be improved. Definitely, there is an upper limit to human anger, so the strength improvement is not endless. And you, after transforming into a red giant, will constantly release the remaining energy after the gamma energy reaction in the form of heat pipes. The heat energy will also increase with your anger. In general, if you get angry, the energy in your body will boil, your temperature will continue to increase, and more heat will be emitted. You can use this to perform superheated attacks and even unleash flames. General Ross looked at his hands and murmured, "Can I release the flames?" The person in charge nodded. "As long as you are angry to a certain extent, you can release the ultimate flame." General Ross said, "But compared to Hulk's increased strength due to anger, my anger only increases heat energy, which seems to be weaker." The person in charge said, "Each has its own advantages and disadvantages." General Ross continued, "What about the abomination? If he gets angry, what will happen?" The person in charge shook his head and said, "Compared to you and Hulk, abomination is more equivalent to an immature product, equivalent to a defective product. His anger does not improve his strength in any way." General Ross nodded slightly. The person in charge pushed his glasses and continued, "However, releasing heat is not your real advantage. According to my test just now, I discovered a situation and discovered your unique and huge advantage." General Ross was slightly taken aback. "Do I have other great advantages?" The person in charge nodded and immediately tapped the keyboard. Immediately, some brand new data and images popped up on the screen. On the screen, one after another gamma rays irradiated on the red giant. The data of channels began to change. Cells begin to absorb these gamma rays, and the cells also begin to change, and the intensity is slowly increasing. Seeing this, General Ross frowned slightly. "This is..." The person in charge looked at General Ross and said solemnly, "This is the red giant you transformed into, absorbing gamma rays and strengthening itself." Seeing this, General Ross took a slight breath and widened his eyes. "I absorb gamma rays and am I getting stronger?" The person in charge nodded slightly. "Not bad." He pushed his glasses again. General Ross quickly took off his glasses, raised his eyebrows and said solemnly, "Don't keep pushing, finish in one breath." Principle. The person in charge squinted slightly, looked at the screen, stretched his neck, but still found that he couldn't see clearly. He simply didn't look at it. He said to General Ross, "General, your greatest advantage is that it becomes fishy when you absorb gamma rays. Definitely, absorbing other energies will also make it stronger, but I observed it, and it seems that gamma rays work best on you. Next, you only need to absorb gamma rays constantly to become stronger constantly. Definitely, you still need to keep training and adapt to your own calendar." When General Ross heard this, a smile appeared on his face, and he tapped on the table with his glasses. The person in charge squinted, looking nervously at his own glasses. General Ross said, "Very well, next, my task is to keep getting stronger. Eventually reach a level where Richard can be suppressed." A gleam flashed in General Ross's eyes. "Hear what Ross said?" The person in charge next to him nodded. "Yes, General, now you just need to keep energy absorbing and keep getting stronger. We have the most abundant resources, which will definitely allow you to grow to a very strong position. Grow to the point that even Richard can't do it. At that time, we can easily take him down." Speaking of this, the person in charge subconsciously pushed the bridge of his nose, and finally pushed a minister. The person in charge continued, "The power of the abomination is 190 tons, and the power of Richard, according to my calculations, is probably around 240 to 260. As long as we increase our strength to 300 tons, we will be able to suppress the opponent. General, in the next few days, we just need to continue energy absorbing to pile up the Liwang to 300 tons, then we can easily take down that Richard." Hear the words of the person in charge. The general next to him showed a smile. "Very good." He clenched his fists and murmured, "This time, I can finally solve Richard's trouble. 300 tons, here I come." Subsequently, the general started his own path of energy absorbing, becoming stronger. A large amount of resources were transported to this military base. More gamma rays are constantly being produced and constantly absorbed into the power of the red giant. Shu Luo on the other side didn't know. Because of him, the red giant was born ahead of schedule, and has the ability to become stronger with energy absorbing. At the moment, he is still working hard on his own research. During this time, Shu Luo's progress finally had some breakthroughs. By constantly experimenting, he found that after the cell performed part of the gamma experiment, it only needed to be careful. You can make your ordinary cells have the ability to store and use a part of gamma energy. You don't need to transform, you don't need to turn into a special green gamma cell, you can use the gamma energy, and you can get a part of the gamma force emperor. Definitely, if the gamma force is too much, the cells cannot control it, and it is easy to form backlash. But for Shu Luo, being able to master and use gamma power under normal circumstances is already a very good start. If it can accommodate a small amount of power, then as long as you continue to follow this path, you can further improve the experiment and improve the entire cell system. At that time, more gamma energy will be able to be stored and used. At that time, it will be comparable to the hatred in the Hulk, and it will be able to perfectly accommodate gamma energy, and will not cause any negative effects. Shu Luo tapped the keyboard quickly, manipulated the instrument, and carried out the real face. He is looking for the critical point of gamma energy that can be accommodated under normal conditions. Just find the tipping point. He can then carry out corresponding experiments. First carry out the gamma experiment of level 1, and endow himself with a safe dose of gamma energy. Complete the breakthrough of your own strength limit. In the basement of a luxury villa, someone is also working hard on technological experiments. One by one flexible mechanical arms are moving rapidly in it. All kinds of welding, assembling, carving, etc. are constantly going on. The entire basement was shrouded in a relatively noisy sound. Tony's forehead was covered with sweat, his hair was messy, and his eyes were bloodshot. He is moving at a high speed, constantly performing calculation deduction with artificial intelligence. Tony murmured. Nanotechnology is really a highly interdisciplinary comprehensive subject research involving a very broad field of modern science and technology. In order to make the nano armor, I studied nanosystem physics, nanochemistry, nanomaterials, nanobiology, nanoelectronics, nanoprocessing, nanomechanics, etc. I didn't expect that nanotechnology would cost me so much time to learn. The knowledge is too complicated. The artificial intelligence replied on Friday. But you are very smart, boss. Even if you learn such complicated and profound knowledge, you can master it as soon as you learn it, and you can pass it by 10 o'clock. As one of the smartest people on the planet, after this period of hard work, the nanotechnology of your battlesuit is almost ready. When Tony heard Friday's praise, the corners of his mouth turned up slightly, and he immediately corrected. Be more rigorous, get rid of that one. As he spoke, he tugged at his collar. He immediately added, these 7 relatively independent and interpenetrating disciplines in the 3 research fields of nanomaterials, nanodevices, and nanoscale detection and characterization. The preparation and research of nanomaterials is the basis of the entire nanotechnology. Among them, nanophysics and nanochemistry are the theoretical basis of nanotechnology, and nanoelectronics is the most important content of nanotechnology. Now I've reached the final step, which is the last step in tackling nanoelectronics. Complete the manufacture of nanoelectronic devices based on quantum effects, and complete the final design of the optical and electrical properties of the structure. Speaking of this, Tony frowned slightly, thinking carefully, thinking about the countermeasures. Just at this time, a figure came down, holding a plate of food in his hand. It is a small pepper. She looked at Tony with chicken coop head, and frowned. What's wrong with you recently, so desperate? Stay in this basement every day, and don't go out at all. She looked at the remaining food on the table, and said angrily, the food is not good, you are so good. Tony raised his head and smiled. Isn't this an inspiration? I just want to get it done quickly. He walked up and wanted to kiss the little pepper. Little Pepper wrinkled her nose, and took a few steps back in disgust. It stinks, don't touch me. Eat well by yourself. Finished. The Little Pepper took away the leftovers and left a new meal. Looking at the background of Little Pepper, Tony smiled. Wait until the Little Pepper is gone. His smile disappeared, and he murmured. This world is too dangerous, I must work harder. Otherwise I'd really be left behind. It's just so insecure. Finished. He turned around and walked aside, and continued to study. Tony looked at his things and murmured. It's only one last step away. My nano battlesuit, Mark 50 Blood Edge battlesuit, is about to come out. Bloodside battlesuit. A brand new battlesuit that originally needed the plot of Avengers Alliance 3 to appear. Compared with the previous battlesuit, the level of combat power has risen sharply. Now, it will be born more than 2 years ahead of schedule. A more powerful Bloodside battlesuit is about to come out, and history has changed. Future history will change along with it. When Tony was researching the Bloodside battlesuit. The other side. Inside a building. The King of Wakanda is speaking. Black Panther was still watching his father speak. At this time, boom, there was a violent explosion. Swallowed the old King of Wakanda straight away. Not far away. Zemo narrowed his eyes slightly, watched the explosion, and murmured. The civil war is about to begin. Shu Luo's side. In addition to research, it is to continue overload training to improve your strength. Through this period of training. Finally, Shu Luo raised his personal power to the extreme. came to his current strength ceiling. Shu Luo was sweating profusely and came to the strength tester. When I was fighting the abomination before, my pure power, without any other power, was 100 tons. This time, I finally reached my limit. Punch out 0. Pung. Bang. Digital mania. Finally stopped at that limit number 130 tons. Look at that limit number. Shu Luo said, finally reached the limit. Now, unless I break the limit of my strength will no longer be able to pass the training, and I will not be able to go any further. Shu Luo shook his fist. Surging power gushes out from the body constantly. The upper limit of spider ability is 100 tons, after adding Luke Cage ability, it reached 130 tons. This is the upper limit of his strength, it is the limit of his current body structure. If you want to break the current upper limit of power, you need to obtain a more powerful power ability to break the existing shackles. That is to break this layer of shackles through gamma power. The little Spider-Man next to him saw this scene, quickly raised his head, clapped his hands vigorously, and said in a childish voice, "Boss is really amazing, really amazing." Shu Luo was very satisfied with little Spider-Man's attitude. He nodded. This power can only be said to be done. Little Spider-Man said, "I will continue to work hard. I will never embarrass the boss." As he spoke, little Spider-Man's pink eyes were piercing, he held his head up and his chest high, and he was arrogant. Seeing the bloody little Spider-Man, Shu Luo nodded in satisfaction. His subordinates should be like this. He immediately said, "The next step is to test how far the strength will reach after being blessed." Last time it was 240 tons, but this time, after the blessing, his strength will once again reach a whole new level. To this, Shu Luo is still looking forward to it very much. Hearing Shu Luo's words, the blue shadow next to him immediately straightened his waist, and the whole guy was ready to go. Always ready to move. He took a breath slightly, blue shadow. Hearing this password, Lan Ying seemed to trigger a switch. Bu, straight shoot. It enveloped Shu Luo in an instant, completely enveloping him. At the same time, the power of demons also diffused out, pouring into Shu Luo's identity. A blue burly monster suddenly appeared, feeling the incomparably tyrannical force gushing out of his body. A smile appeared on Shu Luo's face. This power is too powerful, making Shu Luo feel very happy. He condensed his strength on his fist again. Let me see the new strength. Power continuously rises from the waist, all of which are condensed on the fist, condensed at one point. Boom. Shu Luo made a move, air burst. The air wave explodes. Rush in all directions. Little Spider-Man learned his lesson this time, and hid in the corner early on, lying tightly in the corner. When the air wave came, its whole body was immediately pressed against the wall. The soft ears are swaying wildly, like a fish in the wild waves. An astonishing bang. The fist bombarded the instrument. The number began to soar rapidly, it broke through 100 tons in an instant. It broke through 200 tons in a blink of an eye. 230 tons, 250 tons, 270 tons, 300. The number kept rising, and at 310 tons, the speed of the number began to decrease sharply. Finally stopped at 312 tons. Little Spider-Man stared at the airwaves, looked up, his face was undulating like waves. Under the strong wind, it can't open its eyes wide, but can only squint. Look at that number. Little Spider-Man froze slightly, 3.12 tons. Although little Spider-Man knows that the power of his boss will be greatly improved. But when I saw the final result, I was still shocked. After all it remembers, when it was last tested. The strength of the boss is only 240 tons. All of a sudden, it directly broke through the 300-ton mark. Reached 312 tons. Little Spider-Man murmured, as expected of the boss, as expected of the most powerful person. Shu Luo looked at the number, and a look of satisfaction flashed in his eyes. Very good, very good. Finally broke through the 300-ton mark. We still need to make persistent efforts. A gleam flashed in his eyes. Next, as long as I sort out the level 1 of the gamma power, my power can go further and get a greater improvement. Level 1 of his gamma power has reached the last step. It will be done soon. At that time, he will be able to achieve a breakthrough in the upper limit of strength, and his strength will go further. Think here. A trace of anticipation surged in Shu Luo's heart. He snapped his fingers. Immediately, Lan Ying and little Spider-Man understood each other. Lan Ying quickly stepped back from Shu Luo's body and covered his shirt. Little Spider-Man quickly ran up from the side and jumped onto Shu Luo's body. It happily said, "Hee, congratulations to God for making further progress. Boss, you are indeed the best, the most powerful. I'm going to try my best to get closer to the boss." After this period of training and learning, little Spider-Man has been able to speak proficiently. After all, talking is not too difficult for little Spider-Man. After all, I have learned so much human knowledge before, and it can be regarded as being subconsciously affected. The reason why I can't speak is only because of my previous body structure. After turning into a half-demon and gaining the ability to speak, it is natural to get started very quickly. Shu Luo said, "Okay, let's go back to the laboratory. I will complete the breakthrough of level 1 Gamma ability within today." Finished. Shu Luo took the two cubs to and from the secret laboratory. The other side. Little Wolf Girl and others also rushed towards New York wearing stars and moons, despite the wind and rain. Along the way, they've seen too many disputes. At the same time, they also saw more mutants united against the giant. Not far from New York State, a few people wearing peaked caps are walking fast in the corner of the city. 2 adults and 1 teenage girl. It was Little Wolf Girl and the others. Wolverine said, "After passing this city, we will enter New York State. After a while, we will be able to enter New York City." When the Little Wolf Girl heard this, her eyes lit up instantly. The girl clenched her fists. "It's finally going to New York City, great." The black woman next to Mystique narrowed her eyes slightly. "We have walked for so long and asked so many people. Finally, I got some news about Shu Luo. This guy comes from the Hydra organization. He escaped from Hydra, was hunted down by Hydra, and finally wiped out almost all of the high-level combat force. Recently, some people from Hydra have gone to New York. It seems that Shu Luo may be in New York." She muttered to herself. "I don't know, what is so magical about this Shu Luo?" A trace of confusion flashed in Mystique's eyes. She didn't actually know that Luo Ba couldn't help them. If it is only able to deal with a high-level unit of Hydra, it is not enough to overthrow Essex. After all, it is the place where the power of countless mutants is gathered. The strength has reached an astonishing level. Wolverine looked solemnly. "I hope we can find him in New York." Several people flew towards New York State, inside the secret lab. Shu Luo's brain was spinning crazily, typing on the keyboard rapidly, constantly calculating and reasoning. "After overcoming the last difficulty, I found the safety point. I don't know how long time has passed." Shu Luo tapped the final keyboard. Immediately, a formula was rapidly unfolded and checked. Finally, the entire huge formula is calculated and a value is output. The value of the safety critical point. A gleam of joy flashed in Shu Luo's eyes. "It's done." He didn't stop. "Start the Gamma experiment of level 1. Gain Gamma power and break the limit." Inside the closed laboratory, Shu Luo tapped the keyboard quickly, setting up various instruments in the entire closed laboratory, and setting up the entire process of the Gamma experiment. He moves rapidly. In the entire laboratory, all kinds of instruments were set up by Shu Luo, and every 1/10 of a centimeter was set in place without any deviation. For this reason, Shu Luo also specially checked 1 or 2. After completing the settings, Shu Luo was lying in a special radiation cabin. It is full of translucent liquid, which is the nutrient solution and the protection solution of Shu Luo's cells. It is to better protect Shu Luo from the effects of receiving gamma-ray radiation. It is also to form a special neutralization with gamma rays, in order to induce gamma changes in Shu Luo's cells. Let Shu Luo's cells gain the ability to accommodate and control gamma energy. There was a creak. The radiation chamber is open. Approaching. Shu Luo lay down in it. The liquid was extremely viscous, like cement, flooding Shu Luo's whole body. The radiation chamber is closed. All the instruments in the entire closed experiment also started to move. The electron linear accelerator began to operate crazily, producing a huge beam of high-energy electrons. At the same time, the other side produces a huge laser beam. The laser beam and the high-energy electron beam are rushing towards the same direction, like a crazy torrent. In the end, they collided violently like a comet hitting the Earth, and a beam of high-energy gamma rays burst out. These high-energy gamma-ray beams are poured into the instrument and passed into the radiation chamber. Like an overwhelming force, they frantically rushed into Shu Luo's body in the special liquid. Boom. Shu Luo only felt a rumble in his head. It's like opening up the world. The majestic high-energy gamma rays crazily poured into Shu Luo's body. So at the same time, The special liquid is also being consumed crazily, triggering the rapid evolution of Shu Luo's cells. Shu Luo's cells began to rapidly metamorphosis, strengthening. At the same time, cells are also constantly breaking and repairing. Intense pain flooded Shu Luo's whole body. His face was distorted, his veins were bulging, and there was a painful whimper in his throat. Even Shu Luo. Faced with this pain, I also feel its intensity is amazing. Even more than the pain of taking the super soldier serum last time. Shu Luo felt like he was going to pass out, but he knew that he couldn't pass out yet. Because only when you stay awake, you can perceive gamma rays all the time, and you can make the most of the absorbed gamma rays and use them to strengthen yourself. In order to achieve the greatest strengthening effect. As long as he grasps it well, his body can be greatly improved. If he passed out, there would be no way for the gamma rays to have a better stimulating effect. He gritted his teeth, trying to keep himself clear, trying not to pass out. Because he understands that he needs to maximize strengthening. Because it can save him a lot of time. As long as he survives, he will be promoted. Streams of high-energy gamma rays rushed towards Shu Luo like an infinite tide. If outsiders saw this scene, they would probably only feel their scalps go numb. After all, if such a huge high-energy gamma ray is shot at someone, it can destroy the person almost instantly. Moreover, it can cause huge amounts of unimaginable pain. But Shu Luo is constantly suffering from these gamma rays and suffering from these giant stars. Definitely. Shu Luo originally was also undergoing huge amounts of changes. His cells are rapidly evolving, more and more able to withstand the damage of those gamma rays, and are constantly adapting to these terrifying killing rays. His cells even began to block gamma rays better than higher atom sequence substances like lead. Amazing changes were taking place in his cells. At the same time, under the action of various instruments. While Shu Luo's cells have the characteristics of gamma cells, they have not undergone distortion or metamorphosis. His normal cells have maintained an extremely good balance in the process of constantly having better effects and maintaining the same. The whole room. In addition to the sound of the mechanical operation, what was left was Shu Luo's whimpering and low growls suppressed in his throat. Outside the room. Little Spider-Man paced back and forth, eyes full of anxiety. As a little Spider-Man with knowledge and connotation, it naturally understands the dangers of gamma rays. It is precisely because it understands the danger of this ray that it is so nervous and anxious. Every time Shu Luo does a dangerous experiment, little Spider-Man will be very anxious. It stared eagerly at the laboratory. I kept praying to God, Allah, Tathagata, Jade Emperor and other gods in the east and west in my heart, praying to give Shu Luo the best luck. It constantly murmured, "Bless you." The blue shadow on the other side was lying in the glass cabinet with Riot and the others. Riot said, "What is this guy doing again?" Lan Ying slumped on the ground lazily, like a lump of ooze, and said weakly, "It seems to be making some gamma rays, and I want to inject myself." "Hear, hear." Riot's eyes lit up immediately. "Good guy. This guy really can't think about it, he still does this kind of thing. Gamma rays, isn't that something that kills? Cells can withstand this thing? Injecting such a dangerous thing into my body, I don't want to live at all." The riot suddenly excited the whole person. As long as this guy dies, we will be free, we will be out of the sea of AA suffering. Ha ha ha, at that time, no one can subdue us. We can escape here, and then find a spaceship, leave the Earth, and go to pick up our compatriots. At that time, we will be able to let all the brothers come to the Earth, and then create our own symbiotic civilization. Seeing that the riot was so excited, the blue shadow next to him was still limp. He said lightly, "Someone survived the gamma rays, and that's the Hulk. Since the boss has done this, he must have his own plans. With the boss's ability, it is basically impossible for him to die. After all, he can always create miracles that others can't imagine." Hearing Lan Ying's words here, Riot's originally excited heart fell to the bottom in an instant. It recalled the outrageous things that man had been doing all this time, and his heart instantly became colder. What Lan Ying said seemed quite reasonable. Ordinary people are indeed easily lost in the face of gamma rays. But is Shu Luo an ordinary person? No. When saying so, Riot suddenly looked at Lan Ying, and said, "Boss? Good guy, you are getting louder and louder now. Speaking and shutting is the boss begging. You are completely tamed by him now, right? Do you still have our race in your heart? Do you still have the heart to save the nation? Countless of our compatriots are still living in dire straits, you don't care at all now, do you?" Upon hearing this, Lan Ying coughed. What are you talking about? I still miss our compatriots. It's just that it's useless to be anxious about this kind of thing. We need to figure it out slowly. Lan Ying continued. In our current situation, we can only take one step at a time. Although Lan Ying said so. But my heart is more of a bad mentality. After all, if you can't escape, you can only accept reality. After all, at least it's quite easy to put it badly. You don't need to use any brains, and there is no extra risk. Riot sighed. I hope this devil won't come out again this time. Inside the lab. After Shu Luo experienced a long period of pain, the whole experiment is finally over. The accelerator stopped, the gamma rays started to stop. At the same time, the radiation is rapidly reduced and eliminated. With the disappearance of the gamma rays, the pain on Shu Luo's body also quickly faded away. Instead, there is a brand new body, and brand new gamma normal cells that contain a large amount of gamma energy. Shu Luo could feel that his body was full of explosive power, as if infinite power was surging in every cell. He felt as if he punched down, as if he had the power to overthrow mountains and seas. In this experiment, his physical fitness not only gained the ability to accommodate gamma energy, but also gained a lot of strengthening. I don't know how much my power zone has increased this time. At the same time, I don't know how far my upper limit of strength has reached. The previous strength limit was 130 tons. After adapting to a certain degree of gamma energy, presumably his physical potential should have undergone huge amounts of changes, and his upper limit of strength should have also made great progress. Thinking of this, Shu Luo was full of anticipation. He is going to test it and test his results this time. There was a creak. The entire radiation cabin slowly opened. Shu Luo walked out from inside, his whole body was wet. In the radiation cabin, the characteristic liquid that was originally full has only a shallow layer left, which is not enough to reach the ankle. He walked to the door. Looked to the side screen. It shows. The radiation has been completely removed, and the hatch of the laboratory can be opened. Immediately, Shu Luo opened the hatch. The little Spider-Man, who was constantly wandering outside, saw Shu Luo coming out, and a look of surprise burst into his eyes. It ran towards Shu Luo quickly, trying to jump on Shu Luo's body. But seeing that Shu Luo's body was wet and had some mucus, it stopped immediately. It opened the mouth and said, "Boss, Chang." Feeling the surging gamma energy in his body, Shu Luo nodded in satisfaction. Little Spider-Man said happily, as expected of being the boss, "It's amazing. Now, you can continue to improve and increase your strength. Your strength will increase again by huge amounts of progress." When Shu Luo heard this, he also smiled in his heart. Shu Luo immediately walked towards the testing room, passing by the room where Lan Ying was. He looks in. The offspring of the riots had grown up. But no awareness. Shu Luo also conducted research on it to a certain extent during this time. He murmured, "After the test is over, I will study it again." After speaking, he walked towards the testing room. Inside the symbiote lab, Riot and the others also saw Shu Luo at the door. Lan Ying didn't respond at all. Riot looked at Shu Luo, who was safe and sound, and was shocked. I was horrified. After Shu Luo left, it was a little lost. How could this be? Gamma rays didn't even harm him. Is this guy really an unimaginable monster? Wei Huang next to him also clicked his tongue. Oh my god, this guy is really scary. Gamma rays are such a terrifying ray, he's actually fine. This is a super killer that can easily kill living things. Lan Ying next to him looked at Riot's distraught look, and couldn't help shaking his head. Then it continued to rot and limp on the spot. For it, being bad is the best choice. After all, it has no option to escape. Instead of torturing itself with anxiety and internal friction, it is better to let yourself go. At least not as painful as the riots. Shu Luo just came to the testing room. At this time, one phone call came. Shu Luo took a look and found that it was Kurt, his intelligence chief. When the other party called at this time, they should have discovered something. He nodded directly. What's wrong? Kurt said, over there, boss, we have some intercepts. According to your words, let me pay attention to the information of Hydra. Recently, it was Baron Strucker of Hydra, in conjunction with the Kraken, headed for New York. Now Kurt has not only mastered Osborn's intelligence system, but also obtained the hand, and his intelligence ability has greatly increased. So you can get more information that you couldn't get before. In addition, Mrs. Hydra and Dr. Nozola have also come to New York. According to the information from Baron Strucker, The purpose of the two struckers coming here is to catch Shu Luo for Shu Luo. Dr. Nozola also has the same purpose, wanting to use strength. Only Mrs. Hydra has a moderate attitude and wants to cooperate with Shu Luo. When it comes to Shu Luo, Kurt paused there. According to the information from our investigation, I reasoned and found that Shu Luo is the boss. So, their target is you, boss. Shu Luo nodded. I see. Kurt continued. Boss, do you need me to do something? Gather the Hand and Osborne's mercenaries? Shu Luo shook his head. No need, I will deal with it. Facing a powerful super ability user like the Kraken, it will be difficult for Jin Wei and mercenaries to deal with. Kurt continued. By the way, boss, Mrs. Hydra asked me to bring you a message, telling you to be careful recently and not to show your face. Hear, hear. Shu Luo nodded and hummed. I see. What Madame Hydra meant by these words was to say in a cryptic way that someone was going to do something to him, so let him be careful. This shows that Strack and others really want to do something to him. You continue to monitor Hydra. Yes, finished. Shu Luo hung up the phone. A sneer appeared on the corner of Shu Luo's mouth. Hydra, it's time for us to settle the ledger this time. He shook his powerful fist. His such strength is enough to settle accounts with Hydra. He immediately walked into the testing room. He wants to test it. Come down by yourself. How much strength has increased? How far has the upper limit of strength reached? When he came to the testing equipment, a glint of anticipation flashed in his eyes. I'm also considered a Hulk now, I don't know how much my strength has increased. He took a breath and concentrated his strength on his fist. Boom. Punch out. Drop on the test apparatus. The value on the screen began to skyrocket. The 100-ton mark was broken almost instantly. The numbers are still rising rapidly, soon. That value exceeded 130 tons, still going up. 140, 150, speed AA begins to wane. 155, 160 tons, 165 tons. The final figure stopped at 165 tons. Shu Luo looked at the number and murmured, 165 tons. It seems that the pain I endured this time has some effect, and it made me increase by 35 tons at one time. 165 tons of naked strength, even in the entire Earth, is basically considered the top group. If it is blessed, I don't know how big it will be. After Shu Luo completed the Gamma experiment, the initial strength was 165 tons, far exceeding that of the Hulk in the Abomination, and almost doubled the level. This is because his original power base is very strong, and after this strengthening, he has gone a step further, so there is a huge gap between the initial power of the Hulk and others. Shu Luo continued. Let's check my current potential first. I don't know what the upper limit of my strength has reached. Before, the upper limit of strength was 130 tons. I don't know what level of we can achieve with this breakthrough. Finished talking. Shu Luo walked aside, to the instrument. Physical tests were performed. Eventually a number appeared on a screen. 400 tons. See here. Shu Luo nodded in satisfaction. The upper limit of strength has been increased by 270 tons, almost tripled. In other words, my current strength can be increased to 400 tons through training. Shu Luo looked at the number. There is still a need to continue to improve. This is just the culmination of level 1 research. I still need to complete the whole research as soon as possible, and let the body cells fully adapt to the gamma energy. At that time, no matter how much gamma energy is, it will be able to bear it, and there will be no side effects. The reason why Shu Luo wanted to let his normal cells absorb this power. Except I don't want to change into another form. It is also because the strengthening of normal cells has an additional advantage over the strengthening of Hulk's other morphological cells. That is, if the Hulk and others are drawn out of the gamma energy, they will exit the gamma form and become ordinary people. But Shu Luo will not. The strengthening of his gamma power is his normal cells, and the real strengthening is completed. Even if the gamma energy is lost later, his power is still there. His cells have been strengthened. Even if the energy is lost, the physical state is still there and will not degenerate. This is also the reason why Shu Luo always uses normal cells to obtain strengthening. The little Spider-Man next to him looked at Shu Luo with sparkling eyes, his eyes full of admiration. Can grow to 400 tons, that is simply an astronomical figure. If it can grow to this stage, this phoenix is simply invincible in the world. Worthy of being its boss. That's great. Shu Luo left the instrument for the strength test. Next. Shu Luo is going to test his own strength after blessing. He came to the strength testing apparatus and snapped his fingers. The snapping of fingers was extremely crisp and loud, like a burst of thunder. Echoed throughout the basement. Next moment, Lan Ying's figure came out from the door and stopped in front of Shu Luo. Shu Luo said, "Come on." Next moment, the blue shadow turned into a big net. It enveloped Shu Luo in an instant. Immediately, Shu Luo turned into a blue monster again. Black aura emerged from the bracelet and poured into Shu Luo's body. Immediately, Shu Luo felt his strength surge again. The whole body is full of strength. He felt as if he could blow up the entire superalloy testing room with one punch. Definitely, he understands that he is only an illusion. He raised his fist, looking at his big blue fist like a sandbag. I don't know how far Li can go this time. Last time it was 312 tons. Shu Luo clenched his fists tightly, as if he wanted to gather all his strength together. He punched out. Airburst. A loud bang. The numbers on the side screen began to skyrocket. The number broke through the 100-ton and 200-ton mark almost instantly. Continue to climb rapidly. 250 tons, 270. 300. 320. Breakthrough. 330. The numbers are still climbing rapidly. 340 tons. 360. 380 tons. The numbers are still climbing. But the rate of ascent began to slow. 390. The final figure stopped at 396 tons. Look at the figure. Little Spider-Man's eyes widened, and he took a soft breath. Its eyeballs almost popped out. Almost 400 tons. Looking at that number, Lan Ying was also horrified. After all, it was less than a day. The power has undergone earth-shaking changes. From 312 tons, it directly increased to 395 tons. Lan Ying was really terrified. It murmured in its heart, "What's the situation? Why was it still 312 tons in the morning, but it rose to 396 tons in the afternoon?" It instantly thought of Shu Luo's experiment. What gamma rays are the other party doing? So, the gamma ray experiment worked. No, the gamma experiment is successful. Won't it become like the Hulk? But the boss obviously hasn't changed at all. According to what Lan Ying knows, if the gamma experiment is successful, it will become a green giant like Hulk and Abomination. But my boss hasn't changed at all. It's a little puzzling. When Shu Luo saw the number in front of him, a trace of satisfaction flashed in his eyes. 396 tons. It is about to break through the 400-ton mark. Feeling the power surging out of his body, Shu Luo felt extremely comfortable. He waved his fingers. Immediately, Lan Ying understood. It immediately fell off his body and attached to his clothes, like a piece of blue clothing. With calm eyes, he looked at his hands. Next, it's time to deal with your own affairs. Shield Black Braised Egg and others are making a video call. In front of him, it is a projection one by one. There are Black Widow, Hawkeye and others. Hill, who was sitting next to Black Braised Egg, said, "I recently received news. Most of the upper echelons of Hydra have moved. All come to New York." Hear, hear. Black Widow and the others were all taken aback. Black Widow frowned slightly. "What's the matter? There are so many of them, why are they coming to New York?" Hill said, "For that mysterious man named Shu Luo." Hawkeye's pupils narrowed slightly. Shu Luo is in New York. Hill nodded. It should be, otherwise they wouldn't be heading towards New York in a group. Obviously, it's Shu Luo here. Hawkeye frowned and said, "A group of Hydra executives are here. It seems that Hydra is going to get serious this time. They were going to actually capture Shu Luo." Hawkeye pursed his lips. "We can't let Shu Luo be caught by them. Although we don't know exactly what happened to Shu Luo, once Shu Luo is captured by Hydra, I'm afraid Hydra's strength will rise to a higher level. After all, being able to make them pay so much to catch a person fully demonstrates the value of this person." Hill also nodded, agreeing with Hawkeye's words. The projection of Black Widow said, "Where is Shu Luo? If we want to stop Hydra, the best way is to send people to protect Shu Luo." Hearing this, Hill just shook his head. "We haven't heard about Shu Luo either. It is estimated that only a very small number of people in Hydra know the whereabouts of Shu Luo. Maybe only those high-level officials know Shu Luo's location." Black Widow frowned, pondered for a while and said, "Then we can only start from Hydra. We need to keep an eye on Hydra's people. Once Hydra's people act and attack Shu Luo, we will stop it. In this way, Shu Luo can also be sold as a favor, and at the same time, Shu Luo can be prevented from falling into the hands of Hydra." Everyone else nodded. After all, this is the best way so far. Black Braised Egg said. That's fine, let's settle it like this. Next, you will keep a close eye on the people from Hydra in New York. Once there is a situation, contact the headquarters immediately, and others will go to support. Everyone nodded. Everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't know Shu Luo's true strength. They also don't know how far Shu Luo has grown. In their view, almost all the high-level leaders of Hydra have been dispatched, and this will be a huge amounts of force area. Even Shu Luo couldn't handle it, so they decided to help Shu Luo to deal with the difficulties that will arise next. By the way, he sold his favor and brought Shu Luo under his command. Ever since, S.H.I.E.L.D. also took action here. The other side. A car is driving on the road in New York. Inside the car. In the driver's seat, the Hydra staff drove the car without turning their eyes and focused on the road ahead. In the rear seat, Kraken sat alone in the back. He was on the phone. So it's Li Luo, the man behind the Osborne Company. He looked at the driver and said, "Go to Osborne Company." Yes. The Hydra staff nodded without looking sideways. He quickly turned the steering wheel and rushed towards Osborne Company. Strucker's voice came from the other end of the phone. "You must not let that Shu Luo go. Once he escapes, we will have a lot of trouble if we want to catch him again." The sea monster said to the phone, "Don't worry, I will definitely catch that guy. Can't you believe my ability? Isn't it simple to take care of him?" The sea monster sneered. "I'm going to go to the Osborne building and directly destroy the Osborne building. My company has been damaged, so it's impossible for that guy not to show up." A cold light flashed across the sea monster's eyes. Hearing Siren's words, Baron Strucker fell silent for a moment. Immediately the other party said, "No, you can't do that." Hearing this, the sea demon frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Baron Strucker said, "If you do this, Shu Luo may not come out. After all, he may know your strength. At that time, he may be out of self-protection and won't come out." Hear this. Siren nodded. "You're right, I really can't do this, to prevent this kid from hiding." "That's fine. Then I will lurk near that company. As soon as he appears, I will immediately go forward and catch him." On the other end of the phone. "Okay, let's do this." Siren nodded, with a sneer on his face, just as he was about to hang up the phone. The car rushed into a relatively narrow road. "Call out." A figure suddenly descended from the sky. Landed in front of the car. When the person driving the car saw the sudden appearance, he was startled and his eyes widened. Fake. He still wanted to turn the steering wheel, but it was too close and there was no time to turn the steering wheel. The Kraken in the back seat was startled when he saw the person suddenly appearing, and immediately frowned. He also saw the other party's appearance clearly. Wearing ordinary blue sportswear, but with a mask on his face. From the sky, it is obvious that the Comer is not good. The car was very close to the oncoming person. A voice came from the other end of the phone. "What's wrong?" Only. No one answered him, because the car is about to hit the opponent. The other party stretched out a hand and aimed at the front of the car. From that person's appearance to the shot, almost instantly. Next moment. Under the surprised eyes of the two people in the car. Boom. The whole car seemed to have hit a super hard iron pillar, not a person. The man remained motionless, as if roots had taken root under his feet. A bang. Immediately, the entire front of the car sank deeply, and immediately overturned. The sea monster in the car shrank its pupils when it saw this scene. What a physique, he even managed to bear the impact of the car. The car was thrown off, rolled around in the air, and hit the ground. The driver inside took the dog on the spot. At the same time, a figure covered in injuries climbed out of the car. It was the Kraken. The sea monster looked at the opposite figure, gritted his teeth slightly and said, "You. Who are you?" Seeing the other party's intact body, the sea monster frowned tightly. The opponent's body is really amazing. And being able to withstand the collision of the car without moving a bit, this shows that the opponent's strength is also very strong. This moment. The Siren is under a lot of pressure, he understands that even Strucker completely underestimates him. He immediately retreated in his heart. Because he didn't know the bottom line in his heart, facing such a powerful existence, he felt that he might not have much chance of winning. But he understands that he can't show it, he needs to recover. The Siren met each other's eyes. It was a pair of very calm eyes, without any waves. The other party said, "The person you were looking for. Here, here." The sea monster frowned. "So it's you, Luo." Immediately he sneered. "I didn't expect that you would deliver it to your door in person." I originally said to find you, but now I don't need to spend more time. The sea monster stood up slowly, with a cold face. You seem to be in good physical condition, able to withstand the impact of this car. It's just that it's not enough at all. You should know who I am, how strong my ability is. You can't handle my ultrasonic attack at all. If you don't want to suffer, just admit defeat. The siren had a cold expression. The other party didn't reply at all, turned into a bolt of lightning, and shot towards the sea monster. See here. The siren's face changed slightly. Fuck, is this the time to do it? He opened his mouth. Immediately, sonic burst. The whole person suddenly soared into the air and flew into the distance. After flying, the siren breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the recovery was complete. After leaving the ground, the kraken breathed a sigh of relief. After all, no matter how powerful the opponent is, they can only show their strength on the ground. When he looked back, he was frightened out of his wits. I saw that figure rushing towards the tent. The opponent is flying. And the speed is amazing. The fist became bigger in an instant, and it came to him in an instant. The kraken yelled in horror. No. This moment. The kraken really can't figure it out. Why is the opponent flying? Isn't he the other party a high-profile super soldier produced in the Hydra experiment? Is it just a guy with slightly more strength? Why still fly? The siren quickly turned its head and blasted an ultrasonic wave at Shu Luo. The invisible ultrasonic waves surged out like a tidal wave, rushing towards Shu Luo. Siren originally thought that it could have some influence on Shu Luo, at least to make the other party suspend the attack. Result. Shu Luo didn't seem to be affected at all. There is still no movement in the eyes. Steadily ran to the sea monster. Hit it with a punch. This moment. The sea monster suddenly felt a sense of being deceived. Shu Luo is too powerful. Sterek, that bastard, didn't tell him the truth about Shu Luo. This guy Strak must be hiding a lot of truth from him. This moment. The sea monster only felt that his mind was broken. Shu Luo's fist landed directly on the kraken's body. Pung. Powerful power gushes out from that fist. That huge force scared the sea monster out of its wits. Too much power. He felt as if he had been hit by a truck. Anima. This power. Is this a high-end version of a super soldier? Is this the Hulk? Julie rushed into the kraken's body. In an instant, the sea monster felt a pain all over his body. A scream sounded. Immediately, the kraken fell like a meteorite. It shot towards the ground. Pung. There was a loud noise in an instant. Hit the ground. A big hole was smashed into the ground. The kraken lay on the ground, twitching all over. Shu Luo fell from the sky and landed directly beside the sea monster. Seeing the person who landed in front of him, the sea monster's heart trembled. He looked at Shu Luo with fear in his eyes. It was as if standing in front of him was not a person, but a monster. The sea monster never thought that the other party would be so terrifying. After all, when he came, he never thought that the other party would be so terrifying. He originally thought that the other party was just a powerful strengthening person at most. It may be several times stronger than a super soldier in terms of strength, but it is far from reaching the level of terror. In the end, he didn't expect that the opponent's strength was so terrifying that he easily stopped the impacting car and remained motionless. And the opponent even has the flight ability. This moment. Siren regretted cooperating with Sterek very much. He even hated Strucker a little bit. Because Strucker never told him that the enemy would be so terrifying, so powerful, and even have flight ability. In this world, there are very few people with flight ability, an extremely rare existence. This is also the reason why he breathed a sigh of relief just after he flew up. Because he never thought that the other party would fly. Unexpected result. Strak lied to him. The sea monster's voice trembled slightly. How can you have such a powerful force? I actually don't want to do anything to you. That guy Sterek bewitched me. Don't kill me. I'm willing to shoot for you and kill that fellow Strak. In addition, I can also tell you some other information, that is, other high-level executives of Hydra are also eyeing you. I also know where these guys are. As long as you want, I can do crime and meritorious service. The sea monster spoke hastily, intending to make amends. After all, the man opposite was the man who slaughtered an entire army. And they were all killed by their own hands. In the sea monster's view, this kind of person can be said to be extremely murderous, and he is afraid that the other party will kill him directly. So hastily said these words. To this, Shu Luo calmly said, since I know what you are doing, wouldn't I know what the others are doing? Don't know where they are? Hear, hear. The sea monster's heart sank immediately. The opponent's intelligence ability also far exceeded their imagination. Not only can you easily figure out their thoughts, but you can also easily know their location. Shu Luo didn't say anything more, and immediately reached out to the other party with one hand. When the sea monster saw this, his heart trembled. No, no, don't kill me. He wants to escape. But the opponent's punch made him completely lose his combat and mobility. Even if he wanted to escape, there was no other way. Just when he thought he was going to die, he found that he was just caught by the opponent. Immediately, Shu Luo left here with the siren. For Shu Luo, the siren still has a certain research value. He can research powerful lungs from the opponent's body, so that he can have more powerful lung function. Superman has a super breath, a powerful lung function, which allows him to obtain a powerful breathing ability. Superman can freeze in one breath and create a hurricane in one breath. So Shu Luo didn't kill the opponent directly, because he still needs to study the opponent. Seeing that Shu Luo didn't kill himself, the sea monster was overjoyed immediately and breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, the sea monster is still a little happy that he was not killed. But not long after, Kraken will regret it. He will regret why he didn't die in Shu Luo's hands first. It's over. This will be the last time the Kraken is happy to be alive. Not far from where Shu Luo fought, Hawkeye and Black Widow see the whole fight scene. I saw the scene where the Kraken was easily dealt with. Suddenly his eyes widened. Hawkeye couldn't believe it. Who is this guy? He can easily stand up to a speeding car, and he can also deal with the Kraken so easily. The Siren is an extremely powerful existence in Hydra. The ultrasonic ability is so powerful that it can even have an effect on the Hulk. The result has no effect on that guy at all. The Black Widow next to him looked at the man in front. Suddenly he frowned. Soon, her pupils shrunk. This is Shu Luo. Looking at the other person's black hair and black eyes, especially that body shape, Black Widow immediately thought of Shu Luo. Black Widow said, "This must be Shu Luo." Black Widow murmured. Unexpectedly, Shu Luo made a direct move, and easily took down the siren. Hawkeye next to him was taken aback when he heard this. Is this Shu Luo? Shu Luo is so powerful? Can he suppress the Kraken, and even fly? Black Widow said, "It seems that Shu Luo's strength is also growing." She looked at Shu Luo's disappearing back. Before, Shu Luo escaped from the Hydra organization, which shows that the opponent's strength is not enough to deal with Hydra. When I saw him, he needed the power of technology and those pulse weapons to deal with mechanical exoskeleton soldiers. Later, he directly slaughtered an entire army of Hydra, including quite a few exoskeleton fighters and 4 super soldiers. Now, the opponent has been able to easily suppress the Kraken, and even mastered the ability of flight. As he constantly reappears in our field of vision, his strength will undergo a huge change. Now, his strength has reached an astonishing level, and he is even able to hunt down the top management of Hydra. Speaking of which, Black Widow's face was extremely serious. Hawkeye next to him heard this, and took a slight breath. According to what you said, this guy is simply a monster. Every once in a while, there are huge amounts of change. This growth rate is a bit scary. Hawkeye also looked in the direction where Shu Luo disappeared. What the hell is going on with this guy? What kind of experiments did Hydra do on him to create such a terrible monster with his own hands? At the same time, Black Widow reported what he saw here. Immediately, it also caused a commotion inside S.H.I.E.L.D. They also didn't expect that Shu Luo would make a direct attack, and even easily dealt with a powerful super ability user like Siren. Black Braised Egg looked out the window, stood with his hands behind his back, frowned and murmured, "Shu Luo. What kind of existence are you, and where is your upper limit?" Subsequently, Black Braised Egg gave an order to search for Shu Luo's trace and find Shu Luo. S.H.I.E.L.D. will communicate and cooperate with Shu Luo. The other side. Just after Shu Luo put down the siren, he shot again. There was a cold look in his eyes. Next, it was Nastrak's turn. The other side. Strak over there, he was talking to the siren. It turned out that there was no sound from Siren's side, and a bang was heard immediately, and then the call was cut off. Strak looked at his mobile phone and was stunned for an instant. What's going on? Why is there no sound from the Kraken side suddenly? What is that rumbling sound? Did something happen? Strucker frowned tightly. He didn't know what happened, he was just thinking, who did they offend? Who did the Kraken offend? He called Sea Monster again, but found that he couldn't get through. He immediately understood that something must have happened to Sea Monster. Strack sat silently in an unremarkable car. He pondered for a while, feeling a little uneasy. There is nothing around him that can protect him now. After all, his power was basically destroyed by Shu Luo in the canyon battle. To be on the safe side, Strack decided to leave here. He looked at the driver and said, "Turn around immediately and leave New York." Because he knew that he would not be able to provide much help to the sea monster if he stayed. And with the power of the sea monster, if he is defeated, then he will have no power to help the other party. If the opponent didn't defeat the sea monster, but was defeated by the sea monster, then he didn't have to worry, so he only had to wait for a result. The old and cunning Strack, sitting in an unremarkable car, rushed towards the outside of New York. At the same time, he contacted a group of his subordinates and asked them to find out what happened to the Kraken. After a while, he received a message that the sea monster was easily defeated. Hearing this news, Strucker couldn't believe it. After all, Siren is an extremely powerful super ability user, and it can be regarded as a top existence in the entire super ability world. The result is that such a powerful sea monster will be easily defeated. Strucker frowned tightly. He was thinking about who defeated the Kraken and took the sea away. He sent a text message to his men asking who was the one who captured the Kraken. Could it be the Abomination or Hulk, Thor? In Strack's view, only abnormal existences like the Hulk can defeat the Kraken, and it is basically impossible for other superpowers to be opponents of the ocean. As a result, his subordinates told him that the other party was someone he didn't know, and his body shape didn't look like Thor. Hearing this, Stracko's mind was full of doubts. He really didn't know who this person was. He had never heard of the existence of such a person with great flight ability and powerful strength. At this moment, Strack didn't think of Shu Luo at all, because in his mind Shu Luo was stronger, but at most he was a high-end version of a super soldier, not as perverted as the Hulk. Just as he was thinking, the car had driven out of New York City. When driving out of New York City, Strack breathed a sigh of relief, but then his pupils shrank, and a person appeared in his sight. A masked man stood on the road ahead. The man's attire and mask were exactly the same as what his subordinates had said. For a moment, Strucker's back felt cold and his scalp tingled. He quickly shouted, "Turn around, get out of here." Just as the driver turned the steering wheel quickly, he saw the other party raised his hand, and a tiny gleam of light appeared on the other party's fingertips. The light shot out quickly and rushed towards this side. Then he saw clearly what his light was. It was a tiny arc. The electric arc hit the driver in an instant, and then a burst of lightning erupted all over the driver, convulsing and screaming. The entire car also lost control and sped towards a tree on one side. With a bang, the car crashed into a big tree. Strack in the car only felt his whole body hit hard on the front seat. There was pain all over my body, buzzing in my head, and ringing in my ears. The stinging pain came one after another. He groaned in pain. In his line of sight, the figure walked slowly towards the car. Seeing this, Strack was filled with fear, and he quickly climbed out of the car with difficulty. He wanted to escape, but the other party had already come several meters away. Strack looked at the other party and said with a trembling voice, "Who are you? Have I provoked you? Let me go. I can give you whatever you want, infinite wealth and money you can't imagine. As long as you are willing to let me go, I can give you all." The other party spoke with an extremely calm voice. "Don't you recognize me?" Hearing that voice, Strack's pupils trembled. "It's you." The opponent turned out to be Shu Luo. Strucker did not expect such a terrifying existence to be Shu Luo, who was still avoiding their Hydra not long ago. As a result, it is now so powerful that it can easily eliminate the sea monster, and even find trouble with him and want to attack him. The speed of the other party's progress far exceeded his imagination, and it could even be described as horror. Some time ago, he was an ordinary person, but now he has the terrifying power to overthrow the entire Hydra. What an evil monster is this? Shu Luo looked at the other party very calmly, and immediately burst out, spitting out cold words from his mouth, "Dead 6. Shu Luo was like a ray, rushing towards Starrick at a terrifying speed. Seeing this scene, Strack was so frightened that he wanted to escape, but he couldn't escape him at all, so he could only shout for mercy. Shu Luo turned a deaf ear to this. His eyes were extremely calm, and his speed did not decrease a bit. But Shu Luo punched Strack on the head. There was a bang. Strack's head exploded like a watermelon. Red and white things fly everywhere. But beside Shu Luo, there seemed to be an invisible wall, blocking those red and white dirty things. In this way, the Hydra executives, who were incomparably glorious in the past, are dead at this moment. After doing this, Shu Luo looked at the carcass, and then at the car next to him. The car was still dripping oil. Seeing this, Shu Luo turned around and left, turning into a ray, disappearing into boundless. The car that was dripping fuel suddenly exploded, and the flames engulfed the entire car, and the fire was burning. Shu Luo didn't choose to return to his laboratory, he shot in another direction. Because according to the intelligence of his subordinates, Dr. Zola's robot is basically looking for him everywhere. Just in case, he decided to get rid of all these robots. Soon Shu Luo arrived at one place after another. He shot at those robots and solved those limits in an instant. A burst of explosions sounded in the corners of New York, which represented the destruction of Hydra robots. With little effort, Shu Luo wiped out Hydra robots throughout New York City. While destroying these robots, Shu Luo also hacked into the backstage of these robots, looking for traces of Dr. Zola. Shu Luo is not going to give Dr. Zola a chance to live, he wants to eradicate Dr. Zola as well. Through the powerful computer ability plus these robots, they are connected to Dr. Zola. So he found Dr. Zola very quickly, so somewhere on the plains of Tennessee. Soon the men of S.H.I.E.L.D. found the dead Strucker, along with the destroyed Hydra robots. Through some cameras, they saw some scenes of Hydra robots being destroyed, and the person who destroyed these Hydra robots was Shu Luo. They immediately understood that those Hydra robots, including Strucker, should be destroyed by Shu Luo. Killing 2 Hydra high levels in such a short period of time, and destroying Hydra's robot army, this strength is indeed very powerful, the efficiency is indeed very high. S.H.I.E.L.D. Internal Communications. Black Widow opened the mouth and said, he killed 2 Hydra heights in a row, and also destroyed all Hydra robots. I have a faint feeling that he wants to uproot Hydra this time. Hawkeye next to him heard this, a burst of cold sweat broke out on his back, and he said, uproot Hydra? It's too scary for him to uproot such a large organization. Black Braised Egg said, after all, he was the one who beheaded Steric's entire army in the Battle of the Canyon. It can be seen from here that he is an extremely decisive and hot person. This kind of person will generally not leave any hidden dangers, and he will try his best to eradicate the roots. Since he has the power to uproot Zhong Hydra, then he is very likely to completely eradicate Hydra without leaving any hidden dangers. The faces of the rest of the people changed slightly when they heard this. After all, uprooting the entire Hydra, they S.H.I.E.L.D. also wanted to, but they couldn't do it. Are they going to witness the emergence of a historic event? If the other party does this, then Shu Luo's name will shock the whole world, and it will become a shocking name. Hill said. Why was he able to find the Hydra executives and the traces of those robots? Even if we want to find these things, it will take huge amounts of effort, and we may not even be able to find them all, but he has found them all. This shows that Shu Luo has a terrifying intelligence force, and his intelligence network is beyond our imagination. Black Braised Egg nodded, with an extremely solemn expression. According to the information we have obtained, Shu Luo was a very ordinary existence before leaving Nine Heads. How long has he been escaping from Hydra? Now he has not only such terrifying power, but also such a powerful intelligence network. This man is really terrifying. How on earth did he do it? I suspect now that he was able to do all this, not because of Hydra anymore, I think it was originally because of him. I'm afraid this Shu Luo is beyond our imagination. The rest of the people also nodded when they heard this. Before, they all thought that the reason why Shu Luo became so powerful was because of some strengthening in the Hydra organization, but now it seems that it should not be that simple. There must be something strange in this. I am afraid that there is a huge amounts of secret hidden. Black Braised Egg said calmly. Continue to search for Shu Luo's traces, we must find someone like him, we must not become enemies, we must make friends and become friends. At this moment, S.H.I.E.L.D. raised Shu Luo's evaluation, making Shu Luo's evaluation the highest in history, and at the same time used a huge amount of energy to find Shu Luo. Even the priority of the task of finding the patrol is far higher than other tasks. For S.H.I.E.L.D., finding Shu Luo and befriending him is the most important thing. The other side. Before Shu Luo went to the place where Dr. Zola was, he first found Mrs. Hydra. Soon, Shu Luo was standing in a certain room of a high-level hotel. There is also the sound of showering in the room. Shu Luo snapped his fingers crisply. The sound of snapping fingers spread to every corner of the room, but the bathing sound did not stop. In the next moment, the door of the bathroom was opened instantly, and a dark gun hole poked out, aiming at the people outside. A plump green-haired woman in a bathrobe came out with a cold face, holding a gun. When she saw the visitor, there was a trace of stunned expression on her face. Why you? Shu Luo nodded slightly, extremely calm. It's me. Mrs. Hydra changed her face instantly and smiled. What? Do you want to cooperate with me? From Shu Luo's chest, a little Spider-Man appeared. It glanced at Mrs. Hydra's face, and then at the other's strong capital. Immediately, he hid in Shu Luo's pocket again, clasped his hands together, curled his lips, and hummed slightly. At this moment, the cell phone rang, and it was the ringtone of Mrs. Hydra. Shu Luo understood that this should be a subordinate of Hydra who brought her information, because of the information of Wang Strucker and others. Shu Luo then said, "Answer the phone." Mrs. Hydra quickly answered the phone. "What's going on?" Then came the answering voice from the subordinates on the other side of the phone, and they informed Mrs. Hydra about Strucker, the Kraken and Dr. Zola's robot. Upon hearing her subordinate's words, Madame Hydra's complexion suddenly changed. She looked at the person in front of her again, but her heart was turned upside down, and her eyeballs were trembling slightly. "You destroyed them all." Shu Luo nodded slightly. Madame Hydra looked at Shu Luo with a flash of fear in her eyes. She took half a step back, her voice trembling slightly. "So, are you going to kill me?" She hurriedly continued. "I don't want to catch you like Strucker and the others. I want to take you as my own. I just want to cooperate with you. I have no malice towards you, you should be able to see it, and I have sent you some friendly messages and issued some warnings to you before. There is no grievance between the two of us, you don't need to kill me." Tiny beads of sweat oozed from Mrs. Hydra's forehead. Although she was holding a gun, she didn't feel safe at all. After all, the man in front of him was the one who destroyed an entire army with his bare hands, and will be defeated not long ago. Inside Shu Luo's pocket, the little Spider-Man heard Mrs. Hydra's words, his eyes sparkled immediately, and he quickly poked his head out again, looking at Mrs. Hydra with a tilted head. His eyes were full of surprise. Hearing Madame Hydra's words, Fall just shook his head. "I didn't come here to kill you." Hearing Shu Luo's words, Mrs. Hydra breathed a sigh of relief, and little Spider-Man just sighed helplessly after hearing these words, and then retracted helplessly into his pocket. Mrs. Hydra said, "Then what are you here for?" Shu Luo said, "Become my subordinate and help me do things. I will hand over Hydra to you, and you will be the only speaker of Hydra." Mrs. Hydra murmured. "The other higher-ups will not agree." Shu Luo calmly said, "Except for you, Hydra will not have other high-level officials, and I will deal with them all." Hearing Shu Luo's voice, Mrs. Hydra was shocked. She just thought for a moment, then nodded, put away the gun in her hand, and said to Shu Luo, "Boss." For Mrs. Hydra, there is no choice at all, or there is no need to choose at all, because Shu Luo can eradicate the entire high level of Hydra, which is not paid by her at all. It is not a bad thing to be the subordinate of such a powerful person. Seeing this, a trace of satisfaction flashed in Shu Luo's eyes. He nodded, and immediately said, "Okay, after I finish dealing with it, I will leave the rest of Hydra to you." Shu Luo left a contact information for Mrs. Hydra. Then it turned into a terrifying ray, rushed out of the window, and soared into the sky. Break through the sky and fly towards Tennessee. In an instant, she disappeared from Mrs. Hydra's sight. For Shu Luo, the next step is to get rid of Dr. Zola. On the small side, the minister of a secret base somewhere in Tennessee. A robot made of superalloy sits in it, which is quite different from the surrounding robots, and it looks quite extraordinary. Damn it, that Shu Luo turned out to be a master hacker, he imprisoned me in this body. The robot made an angry voice. The robot is none other than Dr. Zola. He built a machine body for himself, although it couldn't keep up with Ultron's body made of vibranium, but it was much stronger than the ordinary steel alloy body, and it was extremely strong. Dr. Zola stood up slowly, his eyes glowing red. Shu Luo locked me in this alloy body, probably because he didn't want me to use the internet to escape. It seems that he is going to attack me. He should be on his way by now. I have to get out of here quickly, and I can't be caught by Shu Luo. After all, Shu Luo's power is far beyond our imagination, and he is already very powerful. And the hive hasn't returned to Earth yet. I'm not completely sure about meeting that Shu Luo, so I have to leave here first, and I can't go head-to-head with that Shu Luo. After Dr. Zola finished speaking, he began to arrange and set up the entire base. He was going to use these robot warriors in his base and the firepower of thermal weapons against Shu Luo. In Dr. Zola's opinion, with so many robot fighters in his base, and such a huge firepower of thermal weapons, he has at least 3 or 4 chances of winning against Shu Luo, so he is going to gamble. If Shu Luo could be defeated, then everyone would be happy. If Shu Luo could not be defeated, it would be extremely happy for him to be able to cause some damage to Shu Luo and make Shu Luo lose a certain amount of combat power. If it can't bring any harm to Shu Luo, then there's nothing to do. For him, it's just losing some robot fighters and some weapons. At worst, it will be too much for the store to remanufacture. There are losses, but not too great for him. After finishing these things, Dr. Zola left the base. Take a helicopter plane and depart in one direction. Shortly after Dr. Zola left, as soon as the figure arrived, it landed at the base. Immediately there were bursts of rumbling, and the sound of explosions sounded continuously. Dr. Zola's system on the helicopter kept ringing out machine warriors, information about being destroyed, and the attrition rate of thermal weapons. Soon, all robots, thermal weapons were destroyed. All this happened in such a short time that Dr. Zola didn't even have time to react. Dr. Zola sat in the helicopter, feeling the completely destroyed base, and his heart was shocked. It's not that he didn't expect the scene where the base was destroyed, but he didn't expect it to be so fast. Damn it. What kind of monster is this? Dr. Zola raised the speed of the helicopter to the highest speed, flying quickly in the sky, trying to leave here quickly. At this moment, he was really scared, and a trace of fear arose in his heart. At this moment, an alarm sounded, and a red dot could be seen in the radar approaching rapidly. Quickly looking at the screen, a black dot appeared on the screen and was rapidly enlarged, and then he saw a figure, and that figure was exactly that Shu Luo. Seeing this, Dr. Zola wanted to shout a few times, begging Shu Luo for forgiveness. But the other party didn't give him a chance at all, so he arrived in front of the helicopter in an instant, and punched the helicopter at a lightning speed. With a loud bang, the entire helicopter exploded instantly, and Dr. Zola inside was also smashed to pieces by the fist. Huge flames diffused instantly, forming a huge amounts of fireball. A figure flew out from the huge amounts of flames without any damage. It was that Shu Luo. He stands in midair, watching the ball of fire fall towards the ground. He muttered to himself, "It's basically solved, only the hives in other galaxies are left. If you want to solve the hive, you have to wait for the other party to return to Earth first." After finishing these, Shu Luo left the spot and flew towards New York. He will also continue to study the deeper gamma power and super breathing. He was going to dissect the Kraken and study the powerful lung system of the other party. At the same time, Shu Luo was going to find Extremis and optimize it. Because Extremis can spit out huge flames after optimization, and also has a powerful lung system, but the two lung systems have different attributes and functions. One is to emit powerful ultrasonic power, and the other is to emit more flames. But without exception, these two types have similarities, that is, they both need a very powerful lung system, capable of containing and producing these ultrasonic waves and flames. Shu Luo hopes to develop his own super lung system through their commonality, which can bring him powerful lung power and allow him to obtain super breathing. At that time, he will not only be able to create ultrasonic flames, but also create huge giant peaks, and even super freezing will be no different from Superman. Not long after, Shu Luo returned to his secret laboratory and asked Kurt to inquire about the Extremis. According to what he knew, although the menopause virus organization was destroyed, the female scientist who created Extremis did not die. Then he began to study the body of the sea monster. Soon the top management of Hydra was cleaned up, and there was only the news of Mrs. Hydra, which spread quickly like wings. Today's Hydra is no longer decided by a few high-level officials. There is only one person in power, and that is Mrs. Hydra. This news spread out, causing huge amounts of sensation in an instant. Countless people, a large number of organizations, are horrified. After all, the well-known Hydra was completely cleaned up. Those Hydra executives who were hiding in the dark were originally unknown like a hidden disease, but at this moment they were almost all wiped out. Since Hydra was exposed to the world, people only knew about this huge and powerful organization. This is a powerful organization that infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. into a sieve, possessing massive knowledge and terrifying strength. Even if S.H.I.E.L.D. takes action, it can't hurt the foundation of Hydra, but now the top management of Hydra has been cleaned up. Many people speculated that Mrs. Hydra was the one who sat down, but they quickly overturned this guess. After all, Mrs. Hydra did not have such a huge strength to overthrow other high-level executives and deal with all other high-level officials. They can only guess that a more secretive but powerful organization has done all this, at least in the eyes of most people and most groups. Only a very few know the truth about the cleansing of the Hydra organization. Either it is a huge and secretive organization, or it is done by one person. S.H.I.E.L.D. Internal Meeting. In addition to S.H.I.E.L.D., Iron Man, Captain America and others all gathered together. Black Braised Egg said, "The top management of the Hydra organization has been purged, leaving only one Mrs. Hydra, and now Mrs. Hydra has become Hydra, a veritable person in power on the surface." Hearing the words of Black Braised Egg, Iron Man frowned immediately. The person in power on the surface, so Hydra actually has another person in power. Could it be that Mrs. Hydra did not make this plan? Iron Man and the others don't know about Shu Luo and Hydra's senior management recently. Only the core members of S.H.I.E.L.D., such as Black Braised Egg, know more detailed content. And Iron Man is basically busy doing his own things recently, and has no time to care about other things. Black Braised Egg shook his head. This purge was not done by Mrs. Hydra, but by someone else. You all know that person. Hearing this, Iron Man and others revealed that they opened their eyes wide and looked at the black marinated egg in disbelief. One person. One person has cleaned up the top management of Hydra. How is this possible? From the perspective of Iron Man, one person simply cannot complete the task of cleaning the top of the head. Not to mention that there are strict defense forces around those high-level people, it is very difficult to even find them. These guys are hiding very deep. Now there is a person who not only found these people, but also cleared them out of the thousands of troops, which is simply shocking. This requires not only strong strength, but also a very strong intelligence force area. The Black Stewed Egg nodded. Iron Man and the others all gasped. Captain America paused. Who? Black Braised Egg nodded and said, Shu Luo. Hearing this, everyone in Iron Man was taken aback. How could Shu Luo be able to do all this? How long has it been since he escaped from Hydra? How could it be possible to establish such a huge intelligence system, and even be able to clearly know that each of the 9 heads is the location of the high level? In addition, although Shu Luo's strength is very strong, he is not so strong. He directly wiped out all the top management of Hydra, leaving only one Mrs. Hydra. What kind of strength does this have? This is almost the ceiling of Hulk's level, so Shu Luo can be so strong. Black Braised Egg nodded. But that's the truth. In an instant, Iron Man and the others fell silent, and the tone of the black marinated egg was so firm, which showed that the situation was basically true. There was a storm in my heart. After all, being able to do this means that Shu Luo has completely surpassed their imagination. Whether they believe it or not, Shu Luo has become an insurmountable mountain. On top of that, this guy was a regular researcher at Hydra just a few months ago. Iron Man said. To be able to achieve this step, this guy is by no means an existence that can be created by Hydra's research. After all, it is impossible for a strengthening experiment to make a person grow to such a degree. Whether it is strength or the establishment of the intelligence system, the reason why Shu Luo was hunted down was not because of what he had experienced before, but because he originally had a terrifying value. Iron Man's head turned rapidly, thinking about the situation before and after, bit by bit. He paused, then continued, expressing his conjecture. When this guy escaped from Hydra before, still using that electromagnetic weapon to fight against a group of mechanical exoskeleton fighters, which shows that the strength at that time was not enough to match these guys head-on. In addition, according to Natasha Romanoff, the opponent's speed surpasses that of ordinary people, basically reaching the level of a super soldier. If it is only at the level of a super soldier, it is true that there will be fatigue in the face of a group of mechanical exoskeletons. If you are stronger than a super soldier, you don't need to be so afraid of those exoskeletons to overcome. So, when Shu Luo met Natasha Romanoff, he should have the strength of a super soldier. That is to say, he might have injected the super soldier serum at that time. If you just inject the super soldier serum, it won't cause such a big reaction as struck, and it will not cause such a strong pursuit of the man. The reason why Starrick pursued him so intensely is that there is a very high possibility that Shu Luo was not simply injected with the super soldier serum. Speaking of this, Iron Man paused. It's that he has developed the super soldier serum, and it is very likely that he independently developed it. This Shu Luo is a top scientific research genius. A genius beyond people's imagination, even far surpassing me. When Iron Man said this, he was silent for a moment. After all, even he couldn't grow to such an extent within a few months. This can't be summed up as a genius. This is simply a monster. Huan 10 extremely terrifying scientific monster. Hearing Iron Man's words, everyone around fell silent. Black Braised Egg looked at Iron Man, and said, if this is the case, it seems to explain why the opponent can constantly become stronger. Since he was able to develop the super soldier serum, it is very likely to develop something stronger. He is constantly strengthening himself, growing constantly, and finally reach the current state. Everyone at the scene was shocked by Iron Man's deduction. With one's own strength, growing from an ordinary researcher to such a level is really too shocking, and this research ability is too terrifying. Iron Man continued. The upper echelons of Hydra have almost been wiped out, leaving only one Mrs. Hydra. And he basically didn't move other people or resources of Hydra, which shows that he wants to preserve most of Hydra's living history area. So it should be that Shu Luo did it on purpose, just to better master Hydra. From the current situation, that Shu Luo should have already controlled Hydra through Mrs. Hydra. The rest of the people fell silent when they heard this. Mastering Hydra is something that most people dare not even think about, even their S.H.I.E.L.D. and Avengers Alliance have never thought about this kind of thing. The entire meeting room was silent for a long time. Black Braised Egg said, continuing to look for Shu Luo, making friends with him, and cooperating with him will be a huge amount of help for us. If there is any crisis on the Earth in the future, we will have more helpers. Everyone else nodded. At this moment, Shu Luo officially occupied a very important position in everyone's mind, and it was the first time that everyone valued Shu Luo so much. In addition to S.H.I.E.L.D., other organizations, a small number of organizations have also received similar information. They know that someone has purged Hydra's top management, and there has been a big shakeup, Master Hydra. Inside Essex, a group of people sat in a dim meeting room, and in the deepest part of the meeting room, a silhouette loomed. The voice spoke, not angry but pretentious. Have you got the news? Hydra was given a big surprise, and only one Mrs. Hydra was left. The rest of the people nodded, with more or less surprised expressions on their faces. No one expected this scene to happen. The deepest voice continued. This is a guy who has never heard of it, it's really interesting that he mastered Hydra by himself. He then gave the order. Find this guy and find out his identity. I want to see who this guy is and why he has such a great ability. The people sitting below all nodded and said, wish. In addition to the information received from the outside world, even Shu Luo also received similar information, and Kurt was the most shocked. Although he knew that his boss was very powerful and far superior to ordinary people, he never expected that the other party would be able to completely cleanse the top management of Hydra. There was only one Lady Hydra left, which was far beyond his imagination. Kurt looked at the information in front of him in shock, his pupils trembled slightly. The boss is really scary. I didn't expect the boss to have reached such a point. To be able to clean up all the elevations of Hydra, leaving only one person, it seems that Hydra has also become the boss's pocket, and now the boss has even greater power. Kurt was silent for a moment. In this way, it seems that his boss will one day reach a level unimaginable by ordinary people and become the most powerful existence in the world. To become the human world, the real master behind the scenes, control the lifeline of the entire human race, and even the direction of history. After all, with his boss's research talent, changing the direction of human history seems to be a matter of course. Kurt recalled the first time he met his boss. He had no idea that things would develop to such an extent, and he had no idea that his boss would grow to such an extent. Do so many amazing things. He witnessed the emergence of a miracle and the formation of a human epic. He could predict that if one day the boss's behind-the-scenes identity was revealed to the public, it would cause an uproar all over the world and shock the whole world. Kurt then shook his head, clearing the thoughts from his mind. He continued to return his attention to himself and continued to complete the orders issued by his boss. He looked at another piece of information in his hand, which was a woman's address. And that woman is the founder of Extremis. Kurt looked at the information in his hand and muttered to himself, I found you. 3 little wolf girls running in the forest. Wolverine said, I didn't expect someone to kill almost all the top management of Hydra. Mystique said, this person is indeed terrifying, and has a huge intelligence system. Otherwise, it would be impossible to find so many high-level officials in Hydra. It can only be said that this person is too powerful. I don't know who this person is. The little wolf girl asked suspiciously. He just overwhelmed the top management of an organization, so he gave such a high evaluation? Wolverine said, that is Hydra, you may not know, this is a very large organization, once infiltrated the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. Being able to kill all the top executives of such a secretive organization shows that his intelligence system is very powerful. In addition, there are very powerful superpowers in the top management of Hydra, and the surrounding defense forces are amazing. He can kill them, which shows that his strength is also very strong. Hearing this, little wolf girl immediately understood. She couldn't help nodding and said, then this person is indeed very powerful. The little wolf girl couldn't help but said, if our mutant had such a powerful helper, then we might not be so embarrassing when we face Essex. Having said that, little wolf girl couldn't help but sighed. Wolverine said, "It's okay, we will arrive in New York soon. We may find the person Charles mentioned soon, then maybe everything will be different." At this moment, both Wolverine and the model girl were very disturbed. After all, they were still uneasy about whether Shu Luo could save the entire mutant future. After all these are just what Charles said. They don't know, they don't understand what kind of existence Shu Luo is, how the other party can save mutant, and whether the other party will make a move is also a question. After Wolverine finished speaking, the whole team nodded in response, then fell silent, and they rushed towards New York City. The protagonist who caused this monstrous turmoil, at the moment, stayed quietly in a secret laboratory. He didn't know about the uproar in the outside world, and he was still concentrating on doing his own experiments. He constantly dissected the Kraken's body. At the same time, he continued to use powerful healing potions to help the other party survive, which allowed him to conduct more thorough dissection experiments on the other side, and he didn't have to worry about Heimei dying. This caused the Kraken himself to suffer unparalleled pain, as if he had fallen into hell, and the entire room was filled with the screams of the Kraken's miserable pain. As Shu Luo constantly dissected it, he gained a deeper understanding of the Siren's powerful lung system. Siren's powerful lung system provides him with the ability to generate powerful ultrasonic waves, and can withstand the damage caused by terrifying ultrasonic waves. Siren's lungs, throat, and vocal cords all possess a Superman-like terrifying stamina, far beyond Shu Luo's common sense. His eyes were constantly glowing eagerly with increasing excitement as they constantly dissected. Because his cognition of making the super lung system has also been improved, his knowledge is constantly improving. The Siren's hearing and balance are also very miraculous. It is completely unaffected by his hypersonic ability or other similar sound and sound wave abilities, and has great resistance to sound abilities. If I have this strong endurance, then my resistance to sound will also be greatly enhanced. Even if I have a more powerful super hearing, I will not have headaches because of the complicated and terrifying sounds. Crack. Just when Shu Luo was constantly doing anatomy experiments to improve his cognition, Kurt's phone call came. Hearing Kurt's words, Shu Luo's eyes lit up. "Have you found that female doctor? Is she still in New York?" Kurt said. "Yes, the boss is still in New York. After the extremist organization created huge chaos, the female doctor was imprisoned and is currently working for the military. Well, they are developing a more complete extremis and want to make up for the previous shortcomings. I don't know exactly how far it has progressed, but what is certain is that the female doctor is conducting further research in a secret research institute in New York." Hearing this, Shu Luo said, "Have you found the exact location of the female doctor?" Kurt replied, "Sorry, boss, we haven't found the specific location of the female doctor yet, and the other party has done a very good job of keeping it secret." In the end, Kurt changed his tone. "However, we have found a relevant person who knows the exact location of the female doctor. We have already gone to look for this guy. I believe we will get specific information soon." Shu Luo nodded, and immediately said, "Very well, let me know if you have any news." Shu Luo then continued to focus on the Siren. She has a further understanding of the Siren's entire respiratory system through constantly experimental research. He also understood how to conduct experiments to reproduce the powerful breathing system of the sea monster. But Shu Luo didn't do it, because what he wanted was not to reproduce the Siren's breathing system. He wanted to develop his own, more powerful Superman respiratory system from the Siren's respiratory system. However, the current samples are still relatively small, only the respiratory system of the Kraken. So it still needs to find the respiratory system of Extremis, so as to conduct further and extensive research. To study their commonality, so as to develop his own Superman and respiratory system. Let yourself have more powerful lung power, be able to breathe out a more terrifying breath, and even the power of ice. On Shu Luo's side, when the research on the Siren was coming to an end, a call came from Kurt's side. Kurt found the specific location of the Extremis female doctor, just below the single-family house number 321 in Hell's Kitchen in New York. Shu Luo then put down his work and shot towards the place Kurt said. He wants to get the formula of Extremis, and then develop a perfect Extremis, so as to achieve the effect of strengthening the respiratory system and spraying flames. Shu Luo believes that through the breathing system of Extremis, he will be able to find the commonality of the extraordinary breathing system, so as to optimize it to achieve the function of creating a Superman breathing system. A figure runs through the sky above New York and turns into a dotted line. On the other side, there were also disagreements within the Avengers. Because of the Sokovia crash and the bombing in Nigeria not long ago, the entire public opinion has become extremely distrustful of the Revenge Alliance. According to the requirements of the United Nations and high-level US officials, members of Avengers must be registered and controlled. In order for the members of Avengers to act up to standard. Inside the Avengers, voices were split into two regarding the decision. A part of the signatories represented by Iron Man expressed their willingness to accept the arrangement of the United Nations. The other part is the rejection faction represented by Captain America. They express that they do not want to accept the rule of the government and do not want to be controlled. So under this contradiction, the two factions began to dispute. Inside a secret research institute, a team of bare-chested and extremely strong men came out of a room. Looking at the researchers next to these people, they all showed joyful smiles. It seems that this experiment was successful. Extremis has indeed been greatly improved, and the daily death rate has been reduced. All the members of this group survived. Although this is related to their strong will, the more important reason is that the stability of the drug has been greatly improved, so they survived. A leader said, "The next step is to test all aspects of you." Soon this group of people was brought into a room, and then everyone began to conduct corresponding tests. They start doing strength tests, numbers tests, and more. Everyone has demonstrated strength far beyond ordinary people, and a single punch can blast out huge amounts of marks on steel. With everyone's blows, the whole room was full of rumbles. Their speed also far exceeds that of ordinary people. Even the top athletes are nothing in front of them. In addition, their self-healing ability is also very powerful. After the hand is cut off, it can be restored quickly as long as it is connected. In addition, even if you are seriously injured, you can recover quickly. It just consumes energy in the body. After the heat energy in the body is exhausted, this healing ability will be greatly reduced. Everyone's ability is not much different from the abilities shown in the previous Iron Man 3 plots. The only areas of improvement may be stability and mortality. Looking at these people's tests, the whole laboratory showed satisfied smiles. At this moment, a person ran in. He said to the leader, "Someone is missing, it's a staff member, and it belongs to auxiliary research." Hearing this, the leader suddenly frowned. The person next to him said, "It seems that someone knows our secret here, knows what we are researching, and is following us." Another man said, "The only secret we have here is Extremis. Someone kidnapped our people. The most likely is to take out the formula of Extremis from the other party's mouth. However, the complete formula of Extremis is impossible for the auxiliary personnel to know. So the other party can only know the location of our institute from the mouth of the assistant. If the other party wants to get Extremis, they should come to our research institute and enter the research institute to steal relevant scientific research information." A sneer appeared on the corner of the leader's mouth. "They have their eyes on us, and they have to weigh their own weight. Want to get Extremis from us, accept God's descent." After speaking, the leader clapped his hands. Immediately, a swarm of people rushed into the entire room. The leader looked at the strong and well-trained people in front of him, and said with a cold smile, "We have more than 20 Extremis fighters here, and I really don't know who can take things from us." The leader sneered. "If you want to take something from us, you have to leave it with your life." He immediately waved his hand. "Next, you should always be vigilant. Once there is an intruder from outside, take it down immediately. I want to see who is so bold as to want to take things from our hands." Another place in the institute. A woman sits in it. She looked down, her eyes glazed over, and she sighed. This woman is the founder of Extremis, Dr. Maya. Since Killian's organization has caused huge amounts of damage, Dr. Maya has been locked in this research institute and has been helping the government to study a more stable Extremis. She has been imprisoned here, never saw the sun outside, never went out again. Such a depressing life made Dr. Maya feel a little hopeless and depressed. She looked at her hands and muttered to herself, "I don't know if I have a chance to get out of here. Will I spend the rest of my life here?" Thinking of this, Maya suddenly felt even more uncomfortable and depressed. She felt that her future was gone, and her life seemed to be left only with the repetitive actions of mechanical devices. Just when Maya was feeling uncomfortable, a rapid and sharp siren sounded, and the red warning light was constantly flashing. Maya looked at the red warning light above her head, and wondered in her heart, "What's going on? Did someone break into the research institute?" At the gate of the institute, there was a bang, and the entire gate was kicked open. Immediately, bursts of alarm sounded, and red lights flickered throughout the research institute. In the room where the Extremis soldier was standing, when everyone saw this scene, a trace of vigilance rose in their hearts, and they all opened their eyes. I didn't expect someone to actually follow our institute and even break into it. What a short-sighted guy, he dared to break into our research institute. He really wanted to die. The leader quickly opened the tablet, and the corresponding surveillance video popped up from it. Immediately, the door was kicked open, and a heavily shielded man walked in. Only one person, no other companions. The leader frowned instantly, and said, "We were discussing this guy just now, but unexpectedly he came to the door, and there is only one person." He sneered. "I want to see how he takes our things from our hands." After he finished speaking, he waved his hand. "Grab that guy. I want to see what kind of face he has when he covers his face. Which blind person actually dares to break into our research institute to trouble us?" "Yes." The extremist warriors who lived before him answered in unison. Immediately, he rushed out of the room in an orderly manner, and rushed towards the gate. His movements were unified and powerful, as if he had received professional training. These extremist fighters are all elite soldiers drawn from the army, so their movements are very skilled and orderly. The others all walked to the monitoring room, watching what happened in front of them through the monitoring video. I saw that more than 20 soldiers quickly came to the intruder. After the intruder entered the research institute, he didn't act rashly, but inserted a U-disc-shaped thing into an interface. Seems to be doing something. Then the other party took out a foldable tablet, and some videos were played on it. If you look closely, it is the surveillance video of the entire research institute. Suddenly, the group understood the purpose of the intruder. The other party had hacked into their surveillance system and was checking the surveillance video. By the time the other party watched the surveillance, their people had already arrived. Seeing this, some people in the monitoring room accepted it, showing a faint smile, with an expression of wisdom pearls in their hands. On the outskirts of the institute, a group of extremist warriors stood in front of the intruders. Everyone exudes a fierce aura, standing straight, giving people a strong sense of oppression. An extremist warrior looked at the intruder and said, "Put up your hands and surrender, you are not our enemy at all." However, the intruder on the opposite side ignored them at all. His eyes quickly patrolled the screen, as if he was looking for something. Shu Luo was naturally looking for the trail of Dr. Maya. At the same time, they are still looking for some information in this base, that is, the complete nuclear information of extremists. But he found that there was no complete information at all, and it seemed that it had not been stored in the computer, but was recorded in people's minds. Seeing this, Shu Luo suddenly understood that if he wanted to find the complete extremist information, he still had to dig it out of Dr. Maya's mind. Seeing that the intruder didn't answer him at all, but just looked at the tablet in his hand, the extremist fighters suddenly felt a little annoyed in their hearts. One snapped his fingers and said, "Give him some color." Then an extremist warrior galloped towards the intruder, raising his fist to smash him into the air. But when his fist was half a meter away from landing on the opponent raised slightly and waved his hand lightly. Immediately, an invisible force pressed on the extremist warrior. "Call out." The extremist soldier flew straight out, like a cannonball, hitting the wall, smashing a huge amount of hole. The soldier spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Intense pain erupted from his body, but the extremist warrior groaned in pain. When the rest of the people saw this scene, their eyes were wide open, as if their eyeballs were about to pop out. Everyone in the monitoring room, in particular, gasped when they saw this scene. Who was this guy? It was able to blast our soldiers away. The leader picked up the microphone and said, "Shoot together and take down the opponent." Immediately ahead, the extremist fighters exploded with strong speed, rushing towards Shu Luo in a swarm. They all uttered an angry shout, which exploded like a thunderclap in the entire periphery. Shu Luo just finished watching the surveillance video and found where Dr. Maya was. He immediately folded the tablet back, put it back in his pocket, and then rushed out with a stride. With one hand, a huge force suddenly exploded. The invisible position surged out in an instant, pressing down on every extremist fighter. It seemed that 1 or 2 tanks crashed into those soldiers. Bang bang bang. With a loud sound, those soldiers flew out and smashed into the surrounding walls. It even smashed through some walls and fell heavily on the ground. Painful groans sounded out. All the fighters lay on the ground like curled up lobsters. In an instant, more than 20 extremely powerful extremist fighters lost their fighting power just like that, and lay obediently on the ground. This scene made the entire monitoring room silent and silent. No one expected this ending. The leader's voice trembled. How is this possible? He defeated all our extremist warriors with such ease. Isn't every extremist warrior an extremely powerful existence? Why is there no point in the face of this intruder? The extremist fighters they were proud of were defeated like this, which was really hard for everyone to accept. They looked at the guy in the video, with huge amounts of doubts in their hearts. Who the hell is this guy? Why is it so scary? And most importantly, they have never heard of such a terrifying existence. The person next to him asked, "Head, what should we do next? We have no more powerful force to stop him." Hearing this, the leader fell silent immediately, and a strong sense of powerlessness surged from his heart. How else can they even decide that virus fighters won't work on this guy? Do you want ordinary soldiers to use guns to deal with this guy? But it doesn't work at all? And Shu Luo turned into a straight line. Those menopausal virus fighters did not hinder him by 10 points at all. He rushed towards the interior of the research institute, passing through the winding corridors like a straight line. Soon Shu Luo came to the door of a room, and he easily opened the door. Dr. Maya sat on the bed anxiously. Listening to the sound of sirens beside her ears, her hands were constantly sweating. After all, after thinking about it for so long, the siren was still thinking that he could imagine that the intruder must be quite tricky. At this moment, the door was suddenly blasted open. Dr. Maya was startled and trembled all over. She looked at the door that was blasted open, and the stranger outside the door, and her whole body trembled even more. Dr. Maya said, What are you going to do? Take you away. The other party said. Then Shu Luo rushed out of the research institute with Dr. Maya on his shoulder. Everyone in the monitoring room breathed a sigh of relief when they saw this scene. I didn't expect that he just took away a Dr. Maya, it's okay. The leader said. It only injured some soldiers, and then took away Dr. Maya, and did not cause other damage. For the personnel of the institute, the current Dr. Maya is not the most important thing to them. After all, they have obtained the complete formula of extremis, and they are also making further improvements. The loss of a Dr. Maya just reduces the efficiency of their continued research and development. It didn't break their roots, so for them, this loss is still within a controllable range. The other side. Inside the secret lab. Dr. Maya was sitting on a toolbed, and Shu Luo was standing in front of her. Shu Luo said, I need the complete formula of extremis. Dr. Maya nodded quickly. I can give it to you, but please don't hurt me. Shu Luo said calmly, give me something, and you can leave. Dr. Maya then informed Shu Luo of the complete formula of extremis. Compared with the formula in Iron Man 3, this formula is a little more perfect and has a lower mortality rate. Then Shu Luo waved his hand, and the blue shadow next to him suddenly understood, and rushed towards Dr. Maya, covering Dr. Maya in an instant. Soon it fell from Dr. Maya's body and led to Shu Luo's body. The reason why Shu Luo made an unnecessary move is because the formula described by Dr. Maya will be more focused and more refined. If it is to directly let Laniang copy the memory, it still needs to be screened, and it will take a little longer. Lan Ying checked his memory, looked at the formula given by Dr. Maya, and then said to Shu Luo, it's correct. This is the latest and relatively perfect formula they developed. Hearing this, Shu Luo's heart suddenly felt a little happy. The thing is finally in hand, and the next step is to conduct further research. He wants to develop a more perfect version of extremis, which can make people breathe flames directly, and can have a stronger body and a stronger body. Definitely for Shu Luo, a powerful respiratory system that can breathe out flames is what he needs most, and the others basically have no effect on him. Shu Luo looked at Dr. Maya who was in front of him and said, you can leave now. But even after you go out, it's very difficult to enter the society, because you will be caught back after a while. Definitely, I can give you another option, you can stay and do things for me. I can prevent you from being found by other people, and you still have a certain degree of freedom. You will not be bound in the research institute every day, and the sky is dark. Dr. Maya is a top biological genius, he can overcome more difficulties for Osborn. Dr. Maya thought for a while, and she chose the second option. Because she doesn't want to go back to the days of the institute. Then Shu Luo took Dr. Maya to Osborn, and when he came back again, he began to conquer extremis for further research. It took about a day or two before Noah finally developed a truly perfect version of extremis. He looked at the formula in front of him, and showed a smile. The next step is to inject this thing into the human body, and then study the entire flame breathing system. With these two breathing systems, I should be able to create my own Superman breathing system. The other side. An airport in New York. The members of Avengers gathered together, but the atmosphere was not harmonious, and some were tit for tat. The entire Revenge Alliance is divided into two factions, standing at both ends. One faction is headed by Iron Man, and the other is headed by Captain America. Winter Soldier was manipulated by Baron Zemo, escaped from the place where he was held for interrogation, and escaped from the control of the authorities. So he became a wanted man by the authorities. Captain America and Winter Soldier are going to Germany to find Baron Zemo, because they know that Baron Zemo has information about 6 super soldiers. If Baron Zemo is allowed to master this super team, then this will have huge amounts of impact on the entire society. So Captain America Winter Soldier is going to stop Baron Zemo. And Iron Man is mainly here to capture the wanted criminal Winter Soldier. So the two sides formed a confrontation at the airport, preparing to start a battle, and the Civil War broke out completely. At the moment Iron Man's nano battlesuit isn't quite a success yet, so he's still wearing the old model. With the order of the leaders of both sides, the battle officially broke out. Members of Avengers come and go, fighting each other. All kinds of laser cannons burst out at the scene, and all kinds of fist-to-hand fights continued, with constant rumbles. The two sides fought inseparably, and the fighting situation was extremely fierce. Soon, the battle was over with a laser beam. Saw a laser soaring into the sky and shooting at Falcon, but Falcon avoided it. The laser beam shot straight ahead, directly hitting the War Machine's energy center. Immediately, War Machine's steel battlesuit lost its ability source, fell from the sky, fell to the ground, and passed out on the spot. Seeing this scene, the people at the scene fell silent. No one thought that this battle would cause such serious injuries. Everyone looked at the War Machine in Iron Man's arms. Iron Man looked at the war in his arms, feeling extremely sad and indignant. Because through scanning, he found that the War Machine has been paralyzed, and the chances of being able to be cured are very low. On the other side, Captain America and Winter Soldier took a plane and left New York, rushing towards Russia to find Baron Zemo's destination. Iron Man quickly hugged the War Machine and ran towards the hospital. He wants the fastest healing possible for the War Machine, hoping to save the War Machine. It's just that after arriving at the hospital, the doctor said that War Machine basically has no chance to stand up again, and will sit in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Hearing the doctor's answer, Iron Man trembled all over. A trace of despair and annoyance welled up in Iron Man's chest, making his eyes go dark. War Machine is Iron Man's best friend. If the other party suffers irreparable harm, Iron Man will never be able to forgive himself for the rest of his life. At this time, the black marinated egg suddenly came to the scene. Seeing black marinated eggs, Iron Man seems to have found a savior. He hurriedly stood up, ran to the black spiced egg and asked, do you have any way to save him? You are S.H.I.E.L.D. director, you have so many extraordinary resources, you must have a way to make him stand up, right? After hearing Iron Man's words, Black Braised Egg sighed, and said, even if I have the ability to make him stand up again, I also have huge amounts of side effects, and may even directly dead she. Hearing what Black Braised Egg said, Iron Man took half a step back, a little lost. Black Braised Egg grabbed Iron Man's shoulder and was silent for a while. It's not completely hopeless. Iron Man's eyes lit up instantly when he heard the words of Black Braised Egg. Any idea? Black Braised Egg said, you know Osborn Company, right? Osborn Corporation has a very powerful wound potion, but according to the data we have studied and the information we have obtained, Trauma Potion is not Osborn's most powerful healing potion. Their company may have a more powerful healing potion. If you want to get him back on his feet, maybe you can ask the Osborn Company. Ask the person in charge of the Osborn Company for help. Perhaps they can give you a satisfactory answer. Hearing this, there was a gleam of hope in Iron Man's eyes. On the other side, Shu Luo finished his own experiment, and he had the red, amber-like liquid in a potion in his hand. This potion is the perfect version of Extremis. It can completely transform a person's body, endowing a person with a physique beyond ordinary people, and it comes from the powerful flame-breathing system. It's going to be far more effective than Extremis from Iron Man 3. The next step is to inject this tube of Extremis into someone else's body. As for who's injected into the body, it doesn't make much difference to Shu Luo. But after thinking about it for a while, Shu Luo finalized the candidate for the injection. Holding the brand new bottle of Extremis, Zai Luo made a call. Crow's voice came from the other end of the phone. What's wrong? He said, I remember, you said you wanted to restore your arm, right? Crow was silent for a moment. Yes, I want to restore my arm. I want to have an arm made of real flesh and blood. Can you help me? Shu Luo said, I can help you now. But you have two options. First, I will give you a bottle of ordinary healing potion to help you restore your arm. But when you get your arm back, you lose the strength that the steel arm gave you. Hearing this, Crow said without any hesitation, I am willing to lose the strength of the steel arm in exchange for a flesh arm. For Crow, nothing is more important than having a real arm. And what's the second option? Hearing this, Shu Luo nodded immediately, and continued, I will give you a bottle of virus potion with strengthening power. This tube of virus medicine can help you restore your broken arm and at the same time give you strength beyond ordinary people, but this process will be extremely painful. Besides, after you gain the power beyond ordinary people, I will conduct experimental analysis on you, and this process is not very easy. Hearing Shu Luo's words, Crow was silent for a while, and then said firmly, I choose the second choice. For Crow, if he can recover his arm and gain more strength, then this is the best choice. Although it will be painful, in this chaotic and dangerous world. Only with stronger power can you protect yourself and your daughter. Hearing what Crow said, Shu Luo nodded, which is why he chose Crow as the candidate for the injection. It is because he knows that Crow wants to restore his arm, and Crow also hopes to gain more powerful strength. So Shu Luo decided to give this opportunity to Crow. Then Shu Luo asked Kurt to pick up Crow, and Crow came to the secret laboratory after times. Crow was lying on the operating board, tightly restrained by straps. Shu Luo took out an injection gun, and he said to Crow, it's too late for you to regret it, because this process is really painful. Comparatively speaking, as for the medicine, it is not so painful, and you can also restore your arm. Crow's eyes were extremely determined, and he nodded slightly to Shu Luo. Come on, give me an injection. I have to eat this pain. Because I also want to become stronger. Hearing what Crow said, Shu Luo didn't say anything more, and he directly shot the syringe gun in Crow's body. All the crimson liquid in the injection gun was injected into Crow's body. The next class can scratch the whole body, covered with black lines, like black earthworms crawling and wriggling inside. It looks extremely terrifying. Crow let out a horrible cry. The sound of pain resounded throughout the laboratory. You can imagine how much pain Clow is suffering. Shu Luo stood beside him, his eyes extremely calm. Because he knows that this is what Crow has to go through, this is Crow's choice, and he respects each other. A trace of blood seeped out from Crow's pore, and soon dyed Crow into a bloodman. The screaming of pain didn't stop. Carrot was still screaming in pain. At the same time, black liquid slowly emerged from his whole body, and the liquid began to condense on Crow's skin. Form a black skin, like a cocoon. The painful sound continued, and the pitch-black skin on Clow's body grew more and more, as if to form an oval firefly. It took a long time for the tragic cry to end, and a black cocoon was replaced on the spot. Through the scanner, Shu Luo could clearly see that Keela's body was undergoing tremendous changes in the past. The opponent's body strength and cell strength are constantly strengthening. The opponent's body functions are also evolving. It's just that these evolutions are at the cost of destroying the original ecosystem, and then rebuilding it on top of the ruins. The process of breaking everything up and rebuilding is undoubtedly very painful, and this is why K-Lao is so painful. Time passed slowly. Otherwise, the pitch-black cocoon also changed. With a squeak, it was torn apart. A sturdy body came out of it. One by one, the restraint belts were also torn off. It was Crow after strengthening. Crow looked at his body, felt the strength of his body, and there was an ecstatic voice on his face. My arm is finally back and I'm a whole person again. He looked at his recovered arm, squeezed it, and waved it a few times. Immediately laughed ecstatically. It was a heartfelt laugh. My body feels full of power, and there seems to be endless heat inside, like a volcano. Crow looked at Shu Luo in front of him, and was very pleasantly surprised. Brother, I really recovered, my arm recovered, and I also have terrifying power. Shu Luo nodded with a smile on his face. After a surprise, Crow bowed to Shu Luo very solemnly. Thank you, my brother, thank you very much for giving me this rebirth. Without you, there would never be the current Crow. Shu Luo said. You helped me when I was most in danger, so you deserve it. Then Shu Luo continued. Then it's up to you to help me. Shu Luo said that Claw naturally knew what it was, that is, to conduct experimental analysis, which was something the two of them had agreed upon from the very beginning. Crow laughed loudly. Okay, come on. Then Shu Luo first conducted an ability test on Crow and went through a procedure. Bullets couldn't penetrate Crow's body at all. Under Extremis, Crow's body was as hard as steel. Facing the hardness of his body, Crow took a slight breath. He knew that he had become stronger, but he did not expect that he would become so amazing that bullets could no longer penetrate his skin. Then Kelao was asked to conduct a strength test, and now the force of Carrot has reached 50 tons. Seeing this result, Shu Luo couldn't help but sigh. It is indeed the perfect version of Extremis, it is indeed more powerful. Then came the test of Crow's most important ability. I saw Crow opened his mouth, and then a thick flame gushed out from his mouth. It turned into a sea of AA flames and rushed forward, instantly filling the entire alloy room. The whole room was instantly filled with endless flames, and the blazing high temperature almost melted the alloy. Then Crow shut his mouth, eyes full of horror. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Is this my power? This is too scary. Seeing the sea of AA flames spewing out from Crow's mouth, Shu Luo's face showed a hint of satisfaction. All he wants is this powerful flame breath ability. Crow looked at Shu Luo, who was unscathed, not even his clothes were damaged at all. This shows that the other party also has unimaginable physical strength and can withstand such a terrifying flame. Definitely what surprised him the most was his own ability. He didn't expect that he would have such a terrifying ability, and all this came from that little potion. He knew that his brother's research ability was very strong, but he didn't expect it to be so strong. A small potion can actually create a power far exceeding that of a super soldier. He even feels that his current ability has almost reached the forefront of super ability users, which is really amazing. At this moment, Crow has fully determined that Shu Luo is the smartest person in the world. No one, not even that Iron Man, Tony Stark, could compare to a single hair of his brother. After completing the ability test, Shu Luo began to conduct experimental analysis on Crow. Because of Crow's powerful healing ability, Shu Luo didn't need to inject any healing potion into Crow to prevent him from dying. Shu Luo's hands were constantly moving, turning into afterimages, and at the same time a series of tools such as scalpels and instrument keyboards were constantly working. As the patrol was constantly analyzed, it also had a deeper understanding of Extremis' flame-breathing system. To achieve this bodily function, Crow's internal organs are strong enough to withstand jostling and displacement, and are resistant to huge amounts of fire and heat. His pleura needs to be flexible enough, and the lung tissue needs to be elastic enough. In addition, his external intercostal muscles are extremely developed, with powerful strength, which discharges and compresses the powerful heat energy, thereby releasing that powerful heat energy and turning it into a flame. With Shu Luo's further discoveries, further digs, he found that the two respiratory systems do have the same commonality, both have powerful internal organs, and have extremely strong chests. And the elastic and tough lung tissue, as well as the external intercostal muscles are very well developed. After Shu Luo finished studying the flame-breathing system of Extremis, he began to integrate the two breathing systems. Start working on your own new Superman version of the breathing system. Through constant research, Shu Luo invented a series of measures for strengthening visceral lung tissue, respiratory tract and so on. These will give him the terrifying breath ability. Far better than the flame-breathing system and the ultrasonic breathing system. Shu Luo has done in-depth research, began to create the scientific mechanism that would cause this effect of freezing breath. He discovered that as long as he went through the Joule-Thomson effect in thermodynamics, which describes the temperature change of a compressed and insulating gas or liquid passing through a valve at high pressure. At room temperature, all gases except hydrogen, nitrogen, and neon cool rapidly after expanding in this process. Considering that the main components of the Earth's atmosphere are nitrogen and oxygen, the breathing system of frozen breath should be an insulation system, and his lips are a valve. As he inhales, a series of mechanisms in his chest squeeze and condense these gases, overheating them. When he exhales, the heated and compressed air expands rapidly. The faster it expands, the faster the air cools, eventually turning into a powerful frozen breath. In order to achieve this bodily function, his diaphragm must be collapsible, and his internal organs must be strong enough to withstand the jostling and displacement. The pleura needs to be sufficiently flexible, and the lung tissue must be sufficiently elastic. In addition, his intercostal external muscles are extremely developed, with powerful force, and can discharge compressed air, thus using the above principle to create a frozen leaf lift. And all of these are similar to the flame breath, except that one is to spit out heat energy, and the other is to spit out frozen air through a special principle. Shu Luo tapped the keyboard quickly, his eyes sparkling with excitement. He pushed out the basic principles, and the rest is for further improvement. Soon, his freezing breath ability will appear. At the same time, he can not only spit out the power of freezing, but also spit out flames, and even powerful ultrasonic waves. In the entire secret laboratory, there are only the sound of keyboard tapping and the continuous swiping of pens. Shu Luo concentrated on perfecting his super breathing ability. His eyes are constantly scribbling various formulas and sorting out theories, and the movements of his hands can't stop at all. As Shu Luo constantly worked, his super breathing ability became more and more perfect. Finally, as he completed the reasoning of the last formula, he withdrew his hands. Looking at the dense formulas and theories in front of him, surprise flashed across his eyes. "You're done." He finally deduced the super breath completely. Not only did it combine the two previous breaths, it also deduced the freezing breath. Combining the strengths of the three families, he finally created his own super breath. Looking at the super breath in front of him, as long as he reproduces it, Shu Luo will be one step closer to Superman. As a man with a super strong ability, since the thing has been researched, the only thing left is to reproduce it. Just do what you say. Then Shu Luo started to move his hands. The preparations for the replica test began, and the adjustment of various instruments began. And began to prepare various special stimulating agents and special cell growth agents. Time passed slowly. On the other side, Iron Man brought his friend, War Machine, to operate Osborn and shot away, and soon he came to Osborn Company. As Iron Man is a world-renowned superhero and a top-rich man, it is naturally impossible for Osborn to neglect the other party. Soon, Osborn led Iron Man and War Machine to a high-level conference room. The general manager Norman walked in. He looked at Iron Man and said, "Mr. Tony, what's the matter?" There are only 3 people in the entire high-level conference room, namely Norman, Iron Man and War Machine. So Iron Man went straight to the point and said to Norman, "I'm here to ask for medicine. I hope that your company can give me a super potion of self-healing ability. I want to heal my friend." As he spoke, he looked towards the War Machine next to him. Norman also looked at War Machine. When Iron Man came in, he was holding War Machine. So there must be something wrong with War Machine, at least he can't walk by himself. And the look of frustration on at the moment War Machine's face says it all. Then Iron Man said, "My friend has a damaged spine and will probably be paralyzed for life. If you will lend a helping hand, my friend's spine will probably be back to normal." Hearing Iron Man's words, Norman shook his head and said, "Sorry. Our company does not have such a powerful healing potion that can restore paralyzed people to normal. You should know that our company only has band-aids and corresponding trauma medicines, which can increase the recovery ability of the person by 3 times. The medicine you mentioned to cure spinal paralysis requires a very powerful self-healing ability. Our medicine can't do this at all, so you're looking for the wrong person." For Norman, he knew a little about the more powerful healing potion, but he only knew a little information. Since the boss did not announce this potion, and did not tell more people about this potion, it means that the boss does not want this potion to enter the market, but only wants to use it himself. That being the case, it is naturally impossible for him to inform Iron Man of this important news, nor is it possible for him to make such a decision for the boss. Hearing Norman's words, the light in War Machine's eyes dimmed instantly. Hearing this, Iron Man frowned deeply. He was silent for a while and said, "Your company's powerful healing potion is really very important to us." The information about Osborn Company was given to him by S.H.I.E.L.D. So Iron Man is very confident in the correctness of this news. After all, S.H.I.E.L.D. has a huge intelligence system, and they cannot be aimless. Must have found something. Moreover, Black Braised Egg is not the kind of person who makes a fuss about things. So there is a very high possibility that the Osborn Corporation has an extremely powerful healing potion. It's just that the other party had their own considerations, so they didn't make this potion public, and didn't let more people know about it. Iron Man paused. "I know that your company didn't spread the news, which means that your company has its own considerations. I don't want this medicine to enter the market, but please rest assured that if you give us the medicine, we will keep it strictly confidential and will not disclose any information to the outside world." Regarding Iron Man's words, Norman still shook his head. In a surveillance room, Kurt watched the surveillance on the screen. It was Norman and Iron Man in the surveillance. After hearing the conversation inside, Kurt sent a message directly. This information was naturally sent to his boss. After all, Iron Man came to this kind of thing, he felt that he still needed to report to the boss. On the other side, in the secret laboratory, Shu Luo finally completed his own preparations and fully debugged all the instruments and medicines, and the next step is to start the replica experiment. Look at those shining metallic instruments and the brimming liquid. Excitement welled up in Shu Luo's heart, and soon he would be able to obtain super breathing. Just when Shu Luo was about to start work, a message kept coming and he turned on his phone. Seeing the information inside, Shu Luo immediately understood what happened to Osborne. Shu Luo thought for a while, and then sent a message to the other party. It's not that the medicine cannot be given to the other party, but that the other party needs to exchange something. With Iron Man, he does have what he needs, which is the schematic for the new element. The new element can bring him huge amounts of energy. He is still using relatively common energy, which is far worse than the energy of new elements. For example, if he wants to store electricity in his body, he needs to go to a relatively far place to absorb electricity. But with the personnel of the new element, he can be self-sufficient. Moreover, his laboratory also requires a large amount of energy input. In the past, he collected a little here and there, in order to avoid unnecessary attention. This leads to some troubles, and the procedure is more cumbersome. But if there is a supply of new elemental energy, no more steps are needed. The most important thing is that the energy provided by the new elements far exceeds other common energy sources. For Shu Luo, it would be great if he could control this powerful new energy in his own hands. If you want to study it yourself, it will take a lot of effort. Rather than spending a lot of effort on research by yourself, it is better to just take the ready-made ones. As for the arc reactor technology, Shu Luo's eyes flashed brightly. Somewhere in the hard disk of the computer, there is still arc reactor technology lying there for a while. The main reason is that Shu Luo has seen Iron Man before, and his super perception also made some perceptions of Iron Man's arc reactor. So have a general idea of the shape of the arc reactor. Then he reasoned again and got the mature arc reactor technology. Compared with new elements, arc reactor technology is better to control. After all, as long as there is a perception of the various components of the arc reactor, it can be inferred relatively well. But the new elements are too subtle, and he has never touched Tesseract. I don't know its composition, so it is difficult to analyze the structure of the new element. After conveying his meaning, Shu Luo walked to the front test bench and began to carry out the replica experiment on himself. All the instruments turned at this moment, and there were bursts of low rumbling sounds, as if a dragon roared in the abyss. A huge amount of energy is poured into each instrument, and these instruments will be used to inject that special liquid one by one. Various chemical reactions are generated constantly. The replica experiment of super breathing has officially started. Shu Luo's body also began to undergo a little change. Inside Osborne Corporation, Norman rebuffed Iron Man's words. This frustrates Iron Man in the war, but Iron Man is still unwilling to give up, and he asks Norman again. Norman was asked many times, but Norman always gave a refusal answer. Just when the situation was somewhat deadlocked, the door creaked open. Norman looked at the people who walked in, a little puzzled. "Kurt, how did you get here?" Kurt looked at Iron Man and said, "I can give you the potion, but you need to give me the structure diagram of the new element." When Norman saw this, he immediately understood that the boss should have spoken, and that the other party wanted to exchange potions for Iron Man's things. After all, Kurt is basically the boss's voice, the boss's mouthpiece. Kurt generally represents the meaning of the boss. So Norman didn't speak. Iron Man heard this, but his eyes widened, and the war machine next to him also widened his eyes. Listening to the other party's words, it turns out that Osborne has a medicine map with extremely strong self-healing power. Iron Man looked at Norman. Norman nodded. Seeing this, Iron Man immediately understood that this should be the meaning of Ji Luo, the boss behind Osborne. However, when he coughed, Iron Man frowned tightly. New elements, this is his most important energy technology and one of its core technologies. It is also the few wealth left to him by his father. The war machine next to him heard this, stretched out a hand to hold Iron Man's steel arm, and said softly, "Forget it, let's go." War Machine doesn't want Iron Man to be in a dilemma. As Iron Man's good brother, he doesn't want Iron Man to be in a dilemma. So he made his choice. Kurt didn't speak, just looked at Iron Man quietly. Iron Man has been silent all this time. Norman next to him didn't speak either, because he didn't have the right to discuss this matter, and he didn't have much to do with him. War Machine then spoke again. Iron Man looked up at Kurt, making a difficult decision. "I would like to trade." Seeing this, War Machine quickly shook his head. "No, you can't make such a big sacrifice for me. The new element is your core technology, you never show it to the outside world." Iron Man held War Machine's hand. "This incident was caused by me, and your injury is also my responsibility. I must heal you." Then Iron Man leaned over to War Machine's ear, and said softly, "Don't worry, I know what's going on. Even if they get the core technology of the new element, it would be difficult for them to succeed without my arc reactor technology. If you want to mine the energy of new elements, you need arc reactor technology. Using other things to mine energy will have a much worse effect. I only said to give the other party the new element technology, but I didn't say that I would give the other party the arc reactor technology. They just took a treasure mountain for nothing." He then looked up at Kurt again. "I'm willing to exchange." The two sides then reached a deal and signed a contract. Iron Man gave Kurt the structural diagram of the new element, and then Kei-Shi took out the healing potion for a while. Kurt injected the healing potion into the War Machine. War Machine felt that the lower body, which had been numb and lost perception, had recovered. Under the surprised gaze of Iron Man, War Machine stood up again, no different from ordinary people. Iron Man murmured, "The healing effect is really amazing." War Machine looked at his feet excitedly, feeling the lost consciousness. There was mist in his eyes. I can finally stand up again." War Machine suddenly felt the smog in my heart swept away, and the original hopeless mood disappeared. The Iron Man next to him also showed a smile. Kurt sent the new element structure diagram in his hand to his boss. After the exchange, Iron Man took the War Machine and left here in a hurry. Because he still has work to do, and he needs to bring that Winter Soldier back. Iron Man returned to his place, came to the laboratory, completed the final manufacturing work, and immediately his brand new battle armor was born. He flicked the arc reactor on his chest, and suddenly a battlesuit slowly unfolded on him, finally covering him completely. Mark 50, Bloodside battlesuit, is out. Iron Man looked in the direction of Russia, and murmured, "I'm coming." He turned into a ray and rushed towards Russia at an extremely fast speed. He's accelerating through the sky, traveling at a terrifying supersonic speed of at least Mach 10. In the secret laboratory, the instruments were constantly operating, and there were constant rumbles. Shu Luo's body was constantly changing, evolving towards a higher level. Shu Luo's diaphragm, viscera, pleura, lung tissue, and external intercostal muscles are all evolving rapidly. His entire respiratory system began to become an insulating system, better able to accommodate the air of the water flow. Shu Luo's body is evolving towards a more perfect direction. As the instrument completes its last move, the rumbling sound pauses. Shu Luo opened his eyes. He could feel huge amounts of changes in his body, and he could feel his chest seem to contain infinite power. As long as he is willing, a huge amount of heat will be generated in his chest cavity, releasing astonishing flames. He can compress the air for as long as he wants, let it do its intricate work in the chest cavity, and then exhale it, releasing the amazing breath of ice. In addition, he is also able to spit out a large amount of wind. At the same time, he can also release a large number of ultrasonic waves. At this moment, his super breath is officially formed. He got out of bed. He flew out of the secret laboratory and came to the sea of no one. He took a deep breath, and the surroundings were whistling, as if a giant whale was breathing in. There were huge amounts of waves on the sea. It was as if the sea was angry. The huge air was completely sucked into Shu Luo's chest cavity, constantly squeezing and compressing in the chest cavity. In this high-pressure air, its internal organs were also strongly squeezed, starting to shapeshift, and his incomparably tough pleura firmly bound the compressed air. After completing the inhalation, the terrifying and well-developed external intercostal muscles began too. The terrifying compression gap is driven by the external intercostal muscles of the chest, and it gallops outward, like a violent and turbulent giant wave. Shu Luo opened his mouth to beg. Shu Luo opened his mouth, and then a terrifying cold wind spewed out of his mouth like a storm, sweeping towards all directions. The cold storm was extremely harsh, carrying an apocalyptic atmosphere, freezing everything it went. Above the sea, there were still waves raging, causing the sound of crashing waves. But as the storm came, the waves that were still moving were frozen one after another, like sculptures standing in place. The terrifying storm swarmed towards the wider sea surface. Countless seawater was frozen into ice, and the blue seawater turned into snow-white ice. Boundless sheets of ice are forming. At the same time, the terrifying cold air penetrated towards the depths of the sea. The deeper seawater is constantly frozen. This vast expanse of sea froze under Shu Luo's breath of ice. Shu Luo stopped breathing, and the majestic sea area with rolling waves turned into cold water. It seems that this is not the mid-latitude zone of the Atlantic Ocean, but is the Arctic land. The temperature of the entire area also dropped suddenly, constantly falling towards colder temperatures. The whole world seemed to be frozen, and the air was filled with white chill, which made people feel cold. Looking at the ice in front of him, Shu Luo showed a satisfied smile. As expected of ice, your breathing is indeed very powerful. Definitely, this is also because my current body and respiratory system are very strong. That's why it's able to cause such terrifying ice breathing. Although it is impossible to freeze the entire sea area, it is extremely rare to be able to freeze such a large area of the sea. It is considered extremely powerful. Such strong ice breathing is a very good means even if it is used to attack others. After using ice breathing, Shu Nuo opened his mouth again. The temperature in the body boiled up. The temperature of Shu Luo's entire body also began to rise constantly. He seemed to be transformed into a furnace, and the surrounding temperature was also constantly rising. After Shu Nuo tried ice breathing, he was going to use high temperature breathing. This is the ability created by the perfect version of Extremis. Next moment, terrible high temperature was brewing in the weak body. Then, it turned into a terrifying high temperature river, rumbling as if liquid was erupting from its body. High temperature rivers gushed out of his respiratory tract. It instantly gathered in the mouth, and then spewed out from the mouth, turning into an astonishing sea of fire. Pipipipi. When the flames hit the cold air, they turned into countless water vapors. The surrounding temperature is also rising rapidly. The sea of fire is also quite huge, but compared with the more vast ice domain, it is still a little stretched. Then Shu Luo closed his mouth. Although the effect of high temperature breathing is not as good as ice breathing, it is still very good. It is more than enough to deal with ordinary situations and people with super abilities. Shu Luo said, I also have super breathing. The next step is to get other super abilities. After Shu Luo said this, he left the scene. In the painting, a bolt of lightning shot out quickly and disappeared over the vast sea. A large area of ice was left behind, as well as rising light steam, covering the place like mist. Under the sea, a submarine was completing its cruise mission. After completing its cruise mission, they were ready to slowly set off. Originally everything was as usual, nothing unexpected happened. They slowly rose to the surface of the water to replace oxygen. They use oxygen generating equipment and use air regeneration to produce oxygen. The exhaust gas is treated to separate carbon dioxide. The oxygen is then processed by the oxygen generator, and the air in the submarine can be recycled, so that the submarine can stay underwater for 4 to 7 days. After staying for nearly a week, they need to rise to the surface to eliminate exhaust gas and absorb fresh oxygen. Because their submarine is not a nuclear submarine, they cannot stay under the sea for much longer. Nuclear submarines use electrolysis of water, and oxygen can be separated from water through electrolysis. It can continuously supply oxygen to the submarine. Theoretically, the nuclear submarine can sail underwater for many years. However, considering the huge pressure that the crew has endured in a closed environment for a long time, the nuclear submarine will not stay in the water for more than consecutive years, months. Just as they slowly stepped forward, their radar suddenly sensed that a large number of obstacles appeared above their heads and were constantly approaching, spreading towards the bottom of the sea at an alarming speed. Then an urgent alarm sounded throughout the entire operating room. The staff inside opened their eyes, with a trace of fear in their eyes. They looked at what was displayed on the radar screens and spoke one after another. What the hell happened? Did we encounter an enemy attack? Something is approaching us fast, and it's very wide. Is it a new type of weapon? But new weapons don't have such a terrifying range. In their radar, they detected that in a very wide range, there were unknown things constantly crushing toward the bottom of the sea. It is extremely broad and almost occupies the entire radar screen. They had never encountered such a situation, so fear arose in the hearts of all the staff present, which was the fear of the unknown. So the commander of the ship gave an order to turn around and flee towards the bottom of the sea. After hearing the chief's answer, the expressions of other staff members present changed. Sir, if we continue to dive deep to the bottom of the sea at this moment, we will not be able to supply normal oxygen. At that time, all our personnel will die from lack of oxygen. Yes, sir, if we don't rise to the surface now and continue to dive, our oxygen will not be enough. We won't have enough oxygen to get back to the surface again. After hearing what the crew said, the officer also had an ugly look on his face. He didn't want to continue diving deeper, but the unknown vastness and rapidly approaching things really made him feel unsure. Just at this time, on their radar screen, the thing that was rapidly approaching suddenly stopped. It didn't continue to approach downwards. Why did it stop? A staff member looked at the display screen in surprise. The rest of the people also had surprised expressions. The commander frowned and muttered to himself. What happened? At this time, a staff member went through the various bands of sonar, as well as electroacoustic conversion and information processing, finally settling on what was spreading and finally stopping overhead. He then shouted in surprise. Those unknown things that are approaching quickly are ice cubes. They are rapidly solidifying ice. After hearing this man's words, everyone around them widened their eyes. Is that rapidly approaching thing ice? How can this be possible? This is a mid-latitude area with a mild climate and warm currents passing by, so there is no chance of water condensation. The commander said, how can it be frozen? What are you thinking about? As he spoke, he quickly walked towards the staff member and looked at the other person's screen. Seeing the relevant data displayed on the screen, he finally took a breath of cold air. Then the scene fell into a dead silence, and the sound of needle dropping could be heard in the entire control room. There was a horrified expression on everyone's face. After all, there is no possibility of freezing in this area. But this situation happened, and the thickness of the ice was far beyond imagination, and it spread quite a distance into the sea. As they moved up some distance, they finally saw the obstacles above their heads in the crystal ice through the relevant lenses. Everyone's eyes widened when they saw the ice blocks in the ice covering the sky. My heart was filled with disbelief. A staff member said, "Sir, what should we do now? We need to go up now, we need to get oxygen. But we have ice all over our heads, a large area. Our weapons simply cannot penetrate ice of this thickness." The officer said, "Then we will move along the ice constantly, and I will go to a place without ice." He looked bitter. If we can't find the end of the ice before the oxygen runs out, and then go up to the sea, then we're game over. He then said, "Contact the base immediately, report the situation here, and let them rescue us. That way, we'll have a little more chance of surviving." Then the submarine got in touch, and the naval base was shocked when they heard that there was a large amount of ice in the mid-latitudes. They then dispatched specialized personnel and equipment to investigate. Soon they saw an astonishing ice sheet appeared on a certain piece of sea in the mid-latitudes of the Atlantic Ocean, and the entire area was frozen. Looking down from the sky, it looks like the North Pole descending. There is ice everywhere, white ice everywhere. When the people at the naval base saw what happened in the sea area, all the people showed horror. What the hell is going on here? Frozen such a huge area, is this a supernatural event? Could it be that a terrifying ice-type super ability user appeared? The ability to freeze such a large sea area is really amazing. Soon the news of being frozen spread, as if it had grown wings. Many more people were shocked by the news. At the same time, search for the poor submarine on the bottom of the sea, moving forward constantly, looking for a way out. Finally, when the oxygen was about to run out, they finally came to the end of the ice. An ascent was performed and eventually successfully surfaced for oxygen replacement. Everyone in the submarine felt that they had survived the catastrophe, and they breathed a long sigh of relief. They really thought that they would be extremely unlucky and die in the sea. They looked at the endless ice behind and cursed. After all, it was just an ordinary cruise mission, but in the end, his life was almost in danger, and he was almost buried in the bottom of the sea forever. F*K. What is going on? Who made such a situation for us? Almost let us die here. Who did this? It's abominable. Don't let me catch the instigator. Once I catch, a staff member said viciously. The colleague next to him quickly replied, What? What will you do if you catch you? The staff member said viciously, once I catch him, I will definitely curse him in my heart. The other side. Military base. Along with constantly carrying out relevant various test reactions, huge destructive energy is constantly generated. These terrifying energies are constantly flowing rapidly in certain lines of the base, like raging torrents. These huge and astonishing energies are all rushing in one direction, inputting them constantly, and flowing into a certain laboratory. Outside the laboratory, there are some experimenters, all of them are watching the situation inside the laboratory with great concentration. These people are all the researchers of General Ross, and the leader of them is the person in charge. In the laboratory, there is a huge red giant, which is the transformed General Ross. He was lying in an iron tank, and all the energy was poured into that iron tank. Amazingly full of destructive energy, constantly infused into the handle of that giant. If it was an ordinary body, it would have been destroyed long ago under this destructive energy, but that red body was not damaged at all. Because that red body is the red giant, and those destructive energies are gamma rays, gamma energy. Therefore, the body of the red giant cannot be damaged in the slightest. With the continuous input of gamma energy, the body of the red giant in the body is also constantly becoming stronger. On the screen outside the laboratory, the relevant data is also constantly increasing, and the indicators of the Hong XU people inside are constantly rising. This means that the opponent's body is also constantly evolving, strengthening, and moving towards an even more astonishing level. Time passed. Not long after, the injection of the entire energy system stopped. The operation of the huge machine group also stopped. Seeing this scene, the outside researchers all showed a hint of excitement in their eyes. With a roar, the iron can was opened, and a lot of steam came out of the iron can. As the steam dissipated, the scene inside the tin can was revealed. The red giant lay inside with his eyes closed, looking very peaceful, as if he had fallen asleep. The next red giant suddenly opened his eyes, which were crimson, with endless flames burning inside. The person in charge outside held his breath. He said into the microphone, "General Ross, you can test your strength. Look at your strength, has it reached the point we predicted?" The person in charge's words sounded through the speakers in the laboratory. Hearing what the person in charge said, the red giant came out of the iron tank and walked towards one of the doors. With a bang, the extremely heavy door slowly opened, and behind the door was a testing room. The red giant then came to the test instrument. He raised a big hand and clenched his big fist. The muscles on his body were knotted and the veins bulged, like a dragon waking up. Powerful power condensed out of the red giant's body. Just from its appearance, it can be seen that the red giant possesses terrifying power. It is extremely frightening. The researchers outside watched the scene inside intently through the surveillance. Then the red giant punched out directly. With a bang, the air exploded. The huge fist directly hit the instrument for testing strength. With a loud bang, the terrifying shockwave shot in all directions. The powerful shockwave twists the air. It looks scary. People outside saw this scene and their tongues exploded slightly. "I'm going. The strength of General Ross is really amazing. The power of this punch is really terrifying. I really don't know how powerful General Ross will be now." They stared closely at the test data on the screen. I saw that the power data is constantly skyrocketing. It broke through 100 tons in an instant, 150, 170, 200, 230. The data is still rising. Seeing the soaring data, everyone's eyes showed excitement. Especially seeing the data break through 200 tons, 230 tons. The people at the scene took a breath of cool air. Oh my God, as expected of the red giant, it's amazing that his strength has advanced by leaps and bounds to such an extent. During this period, it broke through more than 200 tons. Now someone can finally take care of that guy. The current red giant, General Ross, should be the most powerful super ability user in the world. The strength has reached such a level, is there no rival? The data is still constantly breaking through. 250 tons, 270 tons, 300. The final strength data stopped at 300 tons. Seeing the power of the red giant, a look of surprise flashed in the eyes of the person in charge, and he clenched his fists tightly. It worked. After the toolman threw that punch, he changed back into the appearance of General Ross and walked out of the laboratory. The person in charge hastily greeted him. General Ross said, "How is it? How far has my power reached now? Has it achieved the desired effect?" The person in charge nodded excitedly. "It has been achieved, it has been achieved. Your strength has fully achieved the expected effect. Your current strength is already 300 tons. Hearing the person in charge's words, General Ross's eyes lit up instantly. "My strength has reached 300 tons? Is it so fast?" General Ross raised his hand and squeezed it. "In this way, I will be able to deal with that guy's affairs. I'll be able to take the abomination back from him, and I'll be able to make him a researcher for my army." Having said that, a smile appeared on General Ross's face. The person in charge nodded beside him, and said, "Yes, your current strength is more than enough to deal with that guy. The power of 300 tons is beyond the reach of even the former green-eyed people. Now you are considered the most powerful super ability in the world, let's go." General Ross said, "Find that guy, this time I must take care of him myself." Speaking of this, General Ross showed a confident smile of determination. The person in charge nodded and quickly said, "Okay. I will find that guy next time, and what we lost will be brought back by you, General. And we're going to get a lot more at the same time. Speaking of this, the person in charge felt slightly excited. After all, in his opinion, Richard has a lot of high tech in his hands. The other party is a very top biological genius. With Richard's help, I believe they will make a bigger breakthrough.